Pandora's box is about to open wide.
I thought this was a fitting song to play into the show.
Yeah, I like it.
Walk the Dinosaur by Was Not Was. You're listening to Pandora's Box, ladies and gentlemen, on AW Radio. Thanks for joining us today. Got a great guest in the studio today, George Wakeman, content creator turned author. Instagram is Extinct Animal Facts, got 550k followers and gaining. George, I've been following you. It's hard to say when I started following you on Instagram, but it was at least 5 years ago. When did you start your Instagram?
In lockdown around 5 years ago, 2020.
Right.
I needed something to take my mind off the barrage of information that was coming through on the internet. And I thought, what's not political, what's not controversial, what's just something I can just get stuck into and it doesn't matter because it happened 10 million years ago.
Short-faced bears.
Exactly. everything along those lines. So all the content, I just started it basically thinking I'll post this stuff and see what people think. And then I think after like 30 posts or a month or so, I had 4,000, 5,000 followers. It really just started snowballing. So from there, it became a hobby that I then started taking a little bit more seriously. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's only things I would read out of pure interest for myself anyway. I'm just passing on the information in an aesthetically pleasing way, I like to think.
Yeah, well, no, you do a great job, man. I think, relatively speaking, I must have been one of your first followers, I imagine. Just because I said I've definitely been following you. I said I in my mind it was at least 5 years, so I reckon, relatively speaking, I must be one of your earlier followers. But I think for anybody that's
not to flex,
I'm just not to brag or anything, one of the OGs. But I think for anybody that's super into that, into extinct animals, whether it's dinosaurs or whether it's saber-toothed cats or even all these creatures from like the Permian, like pre-dinosaur even, it's like that stuff is I think that does offer a level of escapism, as you said. Like for COVID times, it was heavy times, man. It's like all you hear on the news every time you turn on the news, it was like everybody's gonna die, can't leave the house, like all this, like so dreary and so depressing. So if you can lose yourself in just thinking, oh, these crazy animals like actually used to walk the earth, like, and you just like sit and think about that for a minute, and it kind of blows your mind, doesn't it?
Well, this is what gets me because I think I'm quite into fantasy and sci-fi and that sort of thing.
Man.
So
yeah.
I feel like this is sci-fi and fantasy combined that actually happened and actually existed. And that to me is what gets me. The fact that these things happened on this planet just so long ago in such incomprehensible amounts of time that your brain literally can't compute what's going on. I just think I get lost in it all day. I could just read about it all day.
Mate, the reason why I'm smiling is because I'm just thinking, man, we are kindred spirits, man. Because that's exactly what I think. I think I've even like said that to people in the past. Whether it's like you read The Hobbit and you're hearing about like Smaug or whatever it might be. You watch fantasy and there's all these crazy creatures, but obviously in fantasy, as amazing as it is, it's made up. It's fictional. But then you have all these crazy creatures that are just as insane as the ones in fiction fantasy, but they actually existed. Yeah. And that's what sort of blows your mind, isn't it?
That's why I think the appeal is with dinosaurs. I think that's why they stick so heavily in the like cultural collective. They were only found out about realistically 200 years ago is when we first put a framework in place for them existing. But you have to think that these creatures, basically, they take on the mythical sort of presence of monsters, of things we see in popular culture and film, but they all abide by the same rules that the sparrow outside or the reptile, crocodile down the road at the zoo does, sort of thing. Yeah. So I think having that duality of like it's a real animal, it's based on the laws of biology and physics. It has to abide by all these rules, but it also feels like something completely out that someone would make up. Someone would make up a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you go, "Wow, what a cool animal! What a creative guy!"
Yeah. And then the thought that actually was roaming around one day. That's amazing, man. As I said, I've been following you for a long time. Sorry. That's all right, man. No worries. So your book, what led to you writing your book? Obviously, so it's not out yet, am I right in saying, but it's going to come out very soon?
17th of March it'll be out.
Releases 17th of March, and did I see that's going to be in Waterstones?
Waterstones and Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It'll be W.H. Smith.
Amazing.
Anywhere you get books, really. Yeah, you can pre-order it if you go in store or online.
That's amazing. How long did it take you to write the book?
It was about 2 years, but I think the year in between me starting that was a good 10 months of me basically putting ideas together, thinking, can I do this? Do I know enough? Do I understand enough about what I'm trying to talk about? With confidence and nuance that makes the everyday person able to understand this stuff, because I forget what I know about this sort of stuff. So I just read about it every day. This page has forced me to basically have an education in this over the last 5 years.
Sure.
So I forget what isn't common knowledge to most people. So for me, it was like, how do I take everything I've learned from running this page and turn it into one cohesive narrative that someone can pick up and go, I don't know that much about prehistory. I know enough, sort of GCSE level science sort of stuff, but I want to know on a deep level what the hell happened. I want to be like, right, this book is 300 pages. You read it from start to finish, and then you've got such a better understanding of what has come before us.
And does that start literally from the origins of life?
It goes backwards, actually. So it starts in the present. So it talks about the current situation. It sort of acknowledges what we are and how we're this peculiar glitch of an animal, where every sort of life form that's come before us hasn't done what we've done, even come close, really. We say, oh, look how clever that dog is because it can catch a frisbee, or it can wag its tail or put its paw up. When you think we're sending things to space, it's a bit of a jump, isn't it? So for me, we start in the present and we go all the way back to the Hadean period with the origins of life. And then from there's about 8 chapters where I just break down science, religion, what we know, how we know it, and the intermediate mixing of all these to basically say, this is what we are. It's a defamiliarization, I'd say. It's sort of saying, okay, you live your everyday life as a human. You don't really think about these things. But objectively, if you were on the outside looking in, this is what we are. And it's a bit strange to even comprehend. So I really wanted to get that into a nice, tight narrative.
That sounds amazing, man. Well, consider me sold. I'm really interested. Obviously, it's the first time I've seen you advertising the book, but it's the first time I've heard in depth about the content. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy. And I've got a daughter that's just about to turn 6, and it's really nice for me because I always say that dinosaurs were one of my first loves. And obviously, when I was a little kid, I don't know how old you are, but I've just turned 36. So when I was a small child, it's when the first Jurassic Park movie came out. I remember there were also these great dinosaur magazines that came out when I was a little kid, and you'd get these like glow in the dark little skeletons, and every week you'd get like a different bit, and then you'd like build a T-Rex or whatever. And I was so excited on a Saturday to go down to the shop with my dad and get one of them. But it's really nice that she's taken after me in that regard as well, and she loves watching whether it's to do with just animals or dinosaurs. And she already knows Pachycephalosaurus from whatever, and I think that's really nice for me as a dad to see that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy, and I'll give it to her so as she gets older, she can read it, and that'd be really nice.
It'd be a good. I think around the age 10, 11, people would start grasping what's going on in the book.
Yeah.
So it'd be a great one for her to sort of grow into.
Yeah, I mean, until then, I can read little bits and bobs to her here and there, can't I? With you becoming an author, was that something that you always sort of dreamed of becoming, or did it happen quite spontaneously? Or
I've always enjoyed sort of writing and creating art. They're two things I've really I've never wanted to sort of monetize any of these sort of interests I've had, because I like to keep the hobby as a hobby. I was never wanting to sort of force myself or trying to like create art for the sake of it to go on Instagram, that sort of thing. So I always had hobbies I enjoyed, but I never really thought about monetizing it or doing anything with it. And I came to the conclusion that I probably need to write a book, like I say, around the 2-year mark of me running the page, because I was like, I've got a lot of knowledge here that I've just accumulated just day in, day out, just reading this sort of stuff. And I feel like my exterior interests, I talk about like general history, religion, media, technology, the trajectory that humans are going on, where we're going, the uncertainty. I find that really interesting as well. And I've tried to sort of implement those thoughts and ideas through the lens of deep time. So as it was almost like the book I didn't decide to write the book. The book came to me as I was getting on with things. And then as I spent a few months basically putting ideas together, grouping segments and thinking that's a good idea. Oh, that goes up with that idea pretty well. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's a solid sort of narrative I can put together. And then it was like, right, I need to get this book out of my head onto paper. And then I didn't really think too much beyond that, really, because I've got no idea what to anticipate with this book coming out, because obviously you'd expect people to have like paleontology PhDs and that sort of thing who are writing books in the current discourse. So I'm an outsider coming in, but I've got my own sort of like, I use the term authority loosely, but people know me for deep time and dinosaur facts and that sort of thing. So it's really a test of how well people have appreciated my content over the years to see if they want to put trust in me and buy a book. I
think at the end of the day, though, man, like you might not have a PhD in paleontology, but I think if you know your stuff, when other people know their stuff. Don't you? And it's just like, that's very simply, so although you might not have those technical credentials, it's clear that you know your business.
Well, thank you. What I find really useful about it is because it's all so old, it's so anti-controversial and so far removed from the current day-to-day things. Yeah. People don't really have emotional sort of, left or right or this way or that way sort of sides on things. So it's say something like along the lines of nutrition, which I find like a very nuanced, complicated topic. I mean, there's so many variables and that sort of thing.
Of course.
I read a few books on nutrition and thought, I guess I know this, and then you don't realize what you don't know. I feel like that doesn't really apply to looking back in deep time, because so much of it is sort of concrete now. I know there's all these sort of conspiracy theories about fake dinosaurs and that they never really happened.
Yeah.
Which if you want to get into, I quite enjoy that topic.
I mean, it's quite funny. I watched a really interesting Joe Rogan podcast with a paleontologist on years ago now. I can't remember the name of the paleontologist. He's like a big guy, bald, and I think he's got like a green or yellow beard. Mm-hmm. But they talked about the subject for about an hour, and he was so irate that like people were trying to make out that dinosaurs were fake, and that people
he coined the term "big paleo," didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
I remember that podcast.
Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting. But it was funny how triggered he was essentially at the idea that
it must annoy people if if you've got a lifetime of like institutionalized education behind you, and then you've got idiots on the internet just saying whatever they want, and that's the issue. I think
it was quite funny. Funnily enough, around that time, I had a friend of mine was seeing a very religious girl who thought that, and she was really trying to convince my mate. And my mate's an intelligent guy, but he is also known for being a little bit gullible. Mm-hmm. So I was really just trying to to say to him every now and again, mate, you don't actually believe this, they're right, because apparently she'd made him watch documentaries on it and stuff, like documentaries,
YouTube specials.
Yeah, like they just dig up just stones and they mold them into whatever shape they want, and then they say it's a dinosaur, that sort of thing, But yeah, no, it is funny. What, in terms of like your, sorry, George, I was going to say, man, as well, can you pull the mic just a little bit closer to you? It should just come to wherever you want to be, if hopefully. But what was the sort of the catalyst? Was there like a specific moment in your childhood that was like a catalyst for your love of prehistoric animals? And where did it all begin for you? As I said, for me, I think it's hard to remember exactly, but the first Jurassic Park movie, as I said, those little magazines. What about you?
Well, I was born in 1994, so that was a year after Jurassic Park came out. So it must have just been since I could basically animate myself. I was drawn towards dinosaurs. Apparently, it was something I always sort of like lent towards. I don't remember a particular time or anything, but I always remember from my childhood. I just Jurassic Park being in my memory. It used to be on repeat. Apparently, I had hundreds of dinosaur toys, and like I'd be able to line them all up and name all of them, and I'd be like 2 or 3 years old. My grandparents would be looking at me like, "What? How does he know this?" It's such an interesting,
yeah, so good.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've always had an interest with deep time and in the natural world in general, but I think because obviously when you watch a nature documentary of anything alive now, it's incredible. You can watch a David Attenborough documentary and you can sit there blown away in your own living room at what you're looking at and the way life has developed in so many forms. And then you got this other side where it's like things have happened and now they don't exist anymore, but why? And that's sort of like the curiosity of a human being like, okay, this existed. It's like a mystery you've got to solve now. So you're getting the benefits of the wonder of nature, but the mystery of things that don't exist anymore. So I think for whatever reason, that's been my main pull, just trying to work out what happened. And I like the perspective as well. Like I like the idea that everything we built around us, it feels so permanent, but it really isn't in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things like time is relative, isn't it? I mean, you got like a midge that lives for a day, does like a second feel like a year to us or whatever, you know? Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like we think of like 100 years as a long time, of course, relative to us it is. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people that maybe aren't into like prehistory, it's hard for them sometimes to wrap their heads around like, the dinosaurs got wiped out like 66 million years ago, and that was when they died out, and there were creatures that were alive millions and millions of years before the dinosaurs even evolved. And what was it? There's like an interesting stat, isn't it? It's like the T-Rex lived closer to the invention of the iPhone than it did to the evolution of the Stegosaurus.
Yeah,
it's like little facts like that, which I think really you think about it, and it sort of blows your mind.
There would have been fossils of Stegosauruses knocking about when the T-Rex was alive.
That's crazy. Another thing I think is fascinating, because you mentioned the mystery of it all, is just the fact as well that, there's, as for all the amazing, dinosaurs and amazing other creatures as well, whether it's, prehistoric mammals or proto-mammals that predate the dinosaurs or whatever they might be, invertebrates that lived in the sea, millions of years before, the Permian, whatever it might be. We've only discovered like a small percentage of fossils of creatures that actually live, because obviously for something to fossilize to last as long, to this modern day, it has to be very specific environment and requirements for something to fossilize well.
Exactly.
So who knows what's lived on the planet that we still haven't even found out about yet. I mean, obviously, when say Jurassic Park came around, we didn't really know about some of the other like massive theropod dinosaurs that we know about now, like Carcharodontosaurus or Giganotosaurus, whatever it might be, Maposaurus, and now all of a sudden you've got all these other giant theropods which rivaled or maybe are even a bit bigger than T-Rex in size. And it's like, what are we going to discover tomorrow? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think this, and this is why I really keep pushing to the page and keep trying to stay on top of all the current discourse, because I think the way that technology is progressing and the way we're finding out things about our past, the next 50 years are going to be really exciting for finding out everything. I think we're getting closer and closer to the big questions, because we've got the big ones like, how did life start? Why did life start? All this sort of thing. We may never answer that question, but I think we're going to get pretty close, hopefully at some point. And I just want to be here for the ride. I want to be able to tell people as much as I can find out about the new instances and the new discoveries going on, and basically just get people educated, because I think a lot of people aren't interested in this sort of thing. They really don't sort of see the deep time sort of intrigue. There are a lot of people out there who do, and I really want to sort of be the person who can sort of tell these people and give it to them in a digestible bit of information, because people they haven't got the time to read these papers and these new things, these new research documents coming out. But if I can give you a quick post and you can scan it with your eyes, get a bit of an idea what's going on, build a better idea in your head about constructing your version of what you think deep time was in history, I think that's enough for me. That's
right, and that is a skill in itself, isn't it? I mean, it's just like pretty well known that you say being a good teacher doesn't necessarily mean that you know the most technically about a subject. It just means that you're the best at teaching. Do you know what I mean? So that that might be your that seems to be like almost like your niche, where you have the knowledge, but what you're really good at is putting it out there in a way that is digestible for everybody.
Yeah, I want it to be accessible for people, because like I say, I mean, a lot of my followers don't even speak English. It's not their first language. So that's a huge part of it as well. Obviously, you can translate things now, and they can translate posts and captions. But I do have to remind myself, right, people don't have the full, history of how mammals came about. Maybe go a bit slower on this one section or this here and there. But I quite enjoy the short form content and creating that, because I think it gets into people's brains easier. Sure. I do enjoy the long form content as well, really thinking and sort of stewing on certain concepts and topics.
Yeah.
So that's why I've got the newsletter as well. So I've got the social media side, which is fun, flashy, a bit, just easy to get along and digest with. And then I've got the longer form content like the newsletter and the book, and that's sort of like for people who really want to take it that extra step further.
Sure.
And really sort of ask for deep questions about what has gone on.
Yeah, man. Have you got like a favorite period in history? So am I right somewhere in the Cenozoic right now?
I think we're in. Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah, we're in the Cenozoic, aren't we, at the moment, I think. Have you got like a favourite, which I think is basically just post the age of mammals, essentially, isn't it? It's like post dinosaurs right up till today.
Yeah.
Have you got like a favourite like era of prehistory? Is it like those giant mammals, whether it's the saber-toothed cats or the short-faced bears or the giant ground sloths, whatever? Is there something that piques your interest a little bit more than anything else, or is it the dinosaurs, or is it the Dimetrodons of the world? Whatever, what is it?
They've all got a special place in my heart, obviously, because I find different elements of it so fascinating. I think the dinosaurs, obviously, that's a given. That'd be a really cool sort of thing to go back and see. I think the Ice Age is fascinating. I also think the time around before the Ice Age, where you have these interglacial periods, and you had mammals that, didn't look too dissimilar from what we had right now. You had some of these elephant, different types, prohibitions. They were just such a variety. So I think that's a really interesting period as well. Like I say, deep time, when you go behind the dinosaurs, you go to the Cambrian explosion, that sort of thing. I find that a really interesting time, how we sort of went from these soft-bodied animals, and then all of a sudden organisms learned to absorb the calcium and the phosphorus from the actual sediment and turn it into armor and ligaments and that sort of thing. It's just a bit insane. So
it's crazy, man. That
interests me as well. But I also like the Hadean period, where you're talking like single cell organisms.
So Hadrian is that's literally the very origins of.
That's the first one, but I think it translates loosely to start of the Earth or Earth origins.
So that's when like the single cell organisms first evolved.
They're pretty sure it happened around the end of the Hadean, yeah. Right. So the start of the Hadean is when you get the late bombardment and the planet forms, and then as that sort of channels off, that's when life is meant to have thought to have started, but obviously still up for debate a little bit.
Yeah, and isn't that when sort of you had like these sort of strange, very alien-looking invertebrates started evolving in the seas, like before fish even evolved?
This would have been way after that. So you're still talking single-cell organisms for a very long time. Yeah, you're talking. The Cambrian explosion would have been when the hard bodies came about, like the armor, that sort of thing. And then before that would have been the Erdician, I think it's called. I don't know how you pronounce it. But that's like bigger animals. They would have been, the sort of size of your arm or your hand. They would have had no hard things at all. We only know about them because there's about 4 or 5 sites around the world.
Wow.
Where there's small imprints of like, just sort of like a jelly, basically. Like it's a floating jelly in the water. And it had the complexity for cell structures to sort of navigate and do simple processes. But in terms of like building arms or ligaments or anything, or even like a brain or anything, there was nothing there for so long. And then the Cambrian explosion was when that sort of fully took off.
And is that when you got things like the sea scorpions?
Yeah.
Which they were about, I think they could grow up to about 9 feet long. Is that right? The biggest ones?
I'm not sure about the ones in the Cambrian, but in the Carboniferous period, that's the one where you had the age of giant insects because the oxygen levels are so high. They'd have been about that size then. You had Arthropleura, which was a millipede, and that was about 12 feet long.
This sounds like my worst nightmare.
12 feet long.
Okay, maybe between 9 and 12. I have to
right, that is mad though, isn't it?
Longer than
scared
a
of
man lying
bugs.
down.
Was that around? Wasn't there what called like? Was it Meganeuropsis? It was like a giant dragonfly.
Yeah, that's the same time. That's
and it was and it was like this big.
Yeah,
their wingspan would have been like that.
It'd be like an eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, like a dragonfly. But it like looked exactly like a modern day dragonfly, other than the size though.
I'm disgusted.
I mean,
that's scary.
You wouldn't have wanted to go back in that time. It wouldn't have been for you, Emma. It wouldn't have been for you.
Not.
I would have fancied it myself. It'd be cool to watch, but you'd have to be like in a bubble so nothing could touch you. If I saw something that big, like I'm bad with insects in general. I find them fascinating.
Yeah,
but I can't touch them.
Yeah,
but,
agreed.
To be fair, I think it's a common thing. A lot of people are like that, aren't they?
I don't like looking at them either. Their faces are scary.
No, that's the thing. I like looking at them if there's a little bit of glass in between.
Yeah.
I can't even do that.
If you're at the zoo or something.
Yeah, that's fun to me.
Does that like translate over to like spiders for you as well? Things like that.
Yeah, I'm okay with them. If there's one in the house I need to get rid of, then like fine. But if I see one of those big bird-eating spiders in a zoo, I'm a bit like my fight or flight is kicking off.
Yeah, sure. It's when you hear those stories about people that come back from holiday and like one crawls out of their bag and stuff like that. It's like the idea of like something like that, like loose in your house in England somewhere, isn't the greatest, is it?
Scary. Yeah.
Nice, man. So when we were talking about you coming on, we discussed that it might be quite cool for you to maybe like take us through roughly 10 of your sort of favorite prehistoric animals from the dawn of time right up to modern day, and sort of get stuck into that. And if you just sort of explain why you've picked those creatures, you happy to do that, man?
Yeah, I've got plenty to go with. Yeah.
Let's get stuck in, man. Let's get stuck in.
So I'll probably have to start with the trilobites.
Right.
You know what they are? They're sort of like a woodlouse looking creature, maybe a bit bigger, maybe about the size of your foot long. But they basically survived for an incomprehensible amount of time. They were just so resilient. They survived pretty much every mass extinction apart from the Great Dying, which was the main Triassic one, which killed off 95% of life at the time, or is thought to have.
Right. Was that in the Triassic, was it?
That was before
that was the Permian extinction, isn't it?
Permian to Triassic, They didn't survive that, unfortunately. And they had some of the first basic eyes, which were actually made entirely out of crystal. And we still know they exist now.
Crystal? Crystal like we would think of a crystal?
Yeah, their eyes were crystal.
That's crazy, isn't it?
That's so crazy. That's so weird.
That's mad.
Like a diamond necklace out of their ankles.
Pretty much. And you can see they're so well preserved because there were so many of them, because they existed so well and for so long. Wow. You can find them. They've still got the crystals as their eyes now, and you can collect them. They're really collectible.
Did they evolve in that Cambrian explosion that you were talking about earlier on?
I think that's when they came about. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Right, okay, what's number 2?
Are we going in order of time, or because I've got them in order? I've got a list, but I don't think they're in.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be in time. Just whatever you think.
I'd have to go with for the dinosaurs. I mean, there's a lot of dinosaurs to like. I mean, the variety they come in, and there's so much to appreciate. But I do think.
Please mention as many as you want as well. When I said 10, it was just sort of a rough number. So notable mentions or whatever you think.
I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. I think you got to start with Ankylosaurus. I mean, I say to people, like, we're used to the idea of dinosaurs existing now, so we sort of take it for granted, but that's quite a hard thing to believe in the first place, I think. And then you've got to tell people, as well as that, there was one particular type of dinosaur that was armoured like you would armour up a medieval soldier, and it had a mace on its tail that we could use as a weapon to destroy theropods' legs and knees and stuff. It just sounds like someone would make it up, and for that reason, I think they're just incredible.
Yeah.
And we don't have a great amount of evidence of their existence, but we have one really well-preserved fossil where you can see its skin, you can see the ways it's sort of like armor all like lines up, and I think it would have been an absolutely fascinating creature to see in existence. You can't comprehend what it'd be like. I mean, you could loosely compare it to a turtle maybe, and that's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or maybe like some sort of like giant armadillo.
Yeah.
Like a giant armadillo with a club on its
Is that like the one in Ice Age where it has like
That was a
where
Glyptodon.
like
yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah, because aren't they? I think I've read before that glyptodons and ankylosaurs. It's like it's an example of is it called convergent evolution?
Evolution, yeah.
Convergent evolution, yeah.
Similar environments produce similar results.
A bit like an ichthyosaur and a dolphin, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's like look very, very similar, but obviously
Responding
one
to their environments at different times, basically.
But one obviously is an ancient reptile and one is a modern mammal. Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, you look at Dodiocedarus and glyptodons and that sort of thing. They don't look like mammals at all. To think they were mammals, I think, is a bit of a mind.
Yeah, because some of them were big as well, weren't they? The size of like a large SUV.
Well, they found evidence of early humans killing them and using their shells as shelters in South America.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, not poor glyptodon, but yeah,
it's you or them, isn't it? At that point?
mean, imagine how crazy that must have been living in a time as a human where, like, think of how insane the world must have seemed, because you're kind of making everything up as you go along.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes I think with, like, say, like horror movies, horror literature, but then also our knowledge of science, we have a very clear distinction in our mind, say, between like what an animal is and what we would think of as a monster. Mm-hmm. But I think in those days, the lines would have been completely blurred.
Yeah.
You would have seen these crazy things, and you wouldn't have thought, okay, this is a scientifically documented animal, and this is some made-up monster like a werewolf. Mm-hmm. You would have just seen these massive freaking, like essentially like armadillos or whatever it might have been, and it would have kind of been quite terrifying but fascinating at the same time. You'd be there at night, and obviously a lot of predators are nocturnal. The kind of strange howls or cries or roars you would have heard in the dark. I mean, it must have been kind of a very magical but crazy time to live in.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression you wouldn't have time for abstraction the way you've just described it, really, because it would just be you think by your impulses. And I mean, I think we sort of pulled away from impulses and animalistic tendencies to start understanding abstraction and sort of societal bonds, which helped us think outside the box to a degree. I think that may have been the determining factor in us becoming what we did. The social animal that managed to sort of work together versus just going off, oh, we're territorial, that's a problem, we need to go and fight that tribe, versus, okay, let's maybe see if we can trade or whatever sort of caused that. But I think it is interesting because, I mean, you look back at some of the most brutal times in history, you look back at, the Roman Empire, you look back at the Genghis Khan sort of reign, and even then you think they still had this scaffolding of civilization, even though it was not what we consider civilization now. They still had a level where, like, people understood to a certain degree, or, you'd have buildings in some form. In the Pleistocene, you'd have had absolutely nothing. You'd have had a tribe between 50 and 150 people. That would be all you know, and anyone else outside of that is potentially a really dangerous threat. And you would have had to have done all sorts of things to survive that we probably can't comprehend now. And, without any modern medicine, anything like that, I mean, the technology would have been very, very limited. And you got to think, using sticks and a bit of fire to fight off things like saber-toothed cats, which would have been, twice the size of any modern lion or leopard. And then you've got things like the wolves, which would have been hunting in packs that we, in crazy amounts of numbers compared to what we see now. You go to Canada or America, you see a wolf, you're like, wow, what an amazing opportunity. They would have been everywhere in the Pleistocene. They'd have been absolutely everywhere. Yeah,
that's crazy. And then it's not just the predators. I mean, obviously, just like today, some of the most dangerous animals are the herbivores, partly because, they don't tend to be the brightest. A lot of them are basically just vegetation factories.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to spend all day eating. So their brain power isn't the highest. But obviously, because they live in dangerous environments, often, like when you see, the big herbivorous mammals in Africa, because they're living around crocodiles and lions and hyenas and the rest of it, they have to... Basically, they don't think twice. There's no like, oh, are you a threat? I'm going to check you're a threat before I kick you in the head and, cave in your skull and you die. It's like, if you get too close, they might just kill you. And they're so big and strong. When you think of like a rhino or an elephant or a hippo or something like that. And then, obviously, when you go back to, as I said, the Pleistocene, some of the animals then would have dwarfed some of the giant mammals of today that, say, live in places like Africa.
Yeah, definitely.
So... but also crazy, as you said, even though we only had sticks and fire and stuff, mad that we still successfly hunted a lot of these things.
I think so, yeah. I think it plays down to the power of social connection and working and understanding. I think there must have been something that gave us a real step above what every animal was thinking, because the way that humans basically navigate the planet, and then pretty much most of the megafauna in any area we touched went extinct centuries later.
Yeah.
I don't think we were the direct cause of that, but I think we had a lot to do with it. So I think it just puts down, it shows how much of an impact you can have when you're that level above the intelligence of everything else. Because every other animal there is going on instincts. You know, they can't think, is this a threat? Is it not? They just live day by day, like as you sort of said. So the fact that we could think further than a day and think outside the box a little bit seemed to have massive consequences for everything else.
Yeah. No, that's crazy, isn't it? Don't they think that's one of the reasons that we outcompeted the Neanderthals is just because even though Neanderthals, I think you might have even had slightly bigger brains than us, but just the parts of their brain that was basically for social development wasn't as developed.
I don't think it's a development problem. They're thinking now they're leaning towards more of it maybe being a cultural problem, where we were more open to collaboration as Homo sapiens, whereas they were a bit more closed off because they'd spent more time up north compared to us. We evolved separately in separately different areas, and we went up north a bit later. We came across them. But I also think there's a lot of our DNA that splices with them, so I feel like we would have just interbred with them. Same as the Denisovians, we would have just sort of, the collaboration thing and the moving around and being able to sort of trust strangers sort of thing seemed to really do a lot for us, and I think we just sort of likely absorb them into our sort of overall frame.
Yeah, because don't they think that like most, I can't remember if this is just Caucasians or everyone in general, but isn't it, I think it's more for Caucasians. So they say that we have between basically 0 and 4% Neanderthal DNA, depending on the person.
Yeah. That counts for every race outside of anyone who's can trace their ancestry back to sub-Saharan Africa. Right.
And am I right in thinking that the Denisovans were more in what we think of as modern-day Asia and South Russia, places like that?
Yeah, so in the Himalayas, they can trace the Denisovians' blood through the genetics now. I think they did molecular studies and they found traces. And they found a skull they found it a while ago, actually, the skull. They recently confirmed it was of a Denisovian origin. So that opens up a lot of doors now to understanding what existed at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I think there's about 30 types of hominids we've sort of aware of or loosely understand of. There could have been hundreds. We like I say, with fossilization, we don't really know what we don't know. There could have been all sorts hanging around, and we think of these as being sort of cave specimens because we find a lot of the evidence in caves. But that's not because they lived in caves full time. That's because it was just where things preserve easy because things don't get touched as much.
Sure, that's a good point.
So, like I say, I think we're going to find more and more out about this in the next couple of decades, and I'm here to sort of take it all in and spread it out.
Yeah, am I right in thinking this might be an outdated sort of theory or whatever you want to call it, but we are still missing a link, aren't we? Is it, when you think about the missing link, is that still a thing as far as you're aware?
I don't think that's as heavily sort of lent on anymore. I think it's more like it's a web and we're just adding bits and pieces here and there. There are certain parts where we can't say how did a Homo erectus become, the next one sort of thing, Homo sapien. There's a few steps missing as we go across the tree. But I think we've got enough of the framework now where we can sort of like, you must have seen that tree diagram where you sort of see the thing branch off. We've got a pretty robust idea now, but it's not complete yet. I wouldn't say there's a missing like integral part. We can sort of paint it together now.
Right.
So I think a lot of it with molecular study they can do now really sort of paints pictures.
That's fascinating. I do think it's mad to think, was it Homo floresiensis that were like the Hobbit people?
Yeah.
So did you know that, Imo? So there used to be like basically a group of humans that were all like 3 foot tall, something like that.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
So when you hear
it's like my mum's one of those.
Wait, so when you watch like The Hobbit, and there's obviously like a little race of people that kind of look like humans, but they're small. There kind of was a group of humans like that. I mean, I'm not saying they were walking around in waistcoats and smoking pipes, but
when they discovered that species, actually, they wanted to call it a hobbit in the scientific name,
right?
But the Tolkien estate said no,
really?
We're doing it, or if you are going to do it, we're going to sue you. So they said, okay, we'll back off.
You would have thought they would have thought that was a bit of an honour in a way. I would have thought.
I think they're quite annoyed they gave away the rights to Amazon. To be honest,
yeah,
I think they're regretting that one a bit now.
Well, apparently, back in the day, when the Beatles were at the peak of their fame, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Have you heard this? Randomly,
I've heard this,
yeah, they reached out to Tolkien, who was still alive at the time, and basically said, we want to make this movie. We want to make like a Hobbit movie, and we want to play. I can't remember if it was. Oh no, it was The Lord of the Rings, not The Hobbit. And we want to play. I don't know if it was Frodo and Samwise or something. And Tolkien was just flat out like, no, I don't care if you're the biggest rock stars on the planet. You are not going to fricking have this random like Beatles does Lord of the Rings.
I'm glad it didn't go that way, but I would be intrigued to see if someone could go into the multiverse and pull that out and give us a copy on DVD. I'd pay a lot of money for that.
John Lennon is Frodo Baggins. Just imagine it.
I haven't even watched it, but I'd want to see that as well.
I mean, I my knowledge on the subject is limited, but I imagine would it have been like the 4 Beatles were the 4 main hobbits? I don't know.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
that would have been comical. I wonder who would have been Pippin out of them lot.
Ringo.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah. So all right. So we've done in terms of your your notable extinct animals since the dawn of time. So you've done so far. You did the was it trilobites?
Trilobite, yeah.
And you've done the ankylosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right in thinking as well? I think I've heard this, that there's no, at least from our fossil records, there's no predatory bites on an ankylosaur fossil that we're aware of, which is obviously very different to say like Triceratops fossils, where there's lots of holes in the bones that look like that, where T-Rex teeth fit perfectly in there.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be evidence that T-Rex was essentially respected ankylosaurs enough to not try their luck with them as much as, say, they might have taken the risk with Triceratops.
That's potentially what happened, but obviously you're talking about sample size. There's so many remains of Triceratops. It was such a successful animal. There's so much evidence they existed. And when you find more situations how it's been preserved, you can obviously sort of understand more about how it lived its life. But I think we've got a very small amount of Ankylosaurus sort of remains. So you could never concretely say that without more evidence.
Of course, yeah, that makes
sense. It's a good argument because, like I say, you've got to think if you're a top-heavy Tyrannosaurus, you've got these small arms, you can't get yourself back up off the floor. That's the last thing you want to sort of fight, really. At least with the Triceratops, you've got something sort of meaty to grab onto if you get over the horns and the frill. But an Ankylosaurus would have been an absolute nightmare to try and attack.
The thing is, they had such a low centre of gravity as well, because even though they were massive creatures, they had quite short limbs. So they've been very close to the floor, but super heavy. Yeah. So hard to flip. As you said, all this armour on their back, and then as strong and as massive as T-Rex was, one swing of that club, if that breaks if you're a T-Rex and that breaks your leg, that could be you done for. That's game over. Yeah, the chances of you being able to successfully eat while that leg is healing is, and that's if it doesn't get infected.
Yeah, and you have to be. I mean, there is evidence they were scavengers as well as predators. They're sort of mixed on it now. I think if it was an all sort of approach, it would just do whatever it could to sort of survive. But even then, scavenging back then would have been difficult. I mean, I think it's very hard for us to comprehend, even though it was an ecosystem like the ones we see now. I think it is difficult for us to comprehend just how difficult it would be to survive there in general. There's a reason the dinosaurs look the way they do, because they reflect the environment they evolved in, and that tells you how scary that ecosystem would have been. Oh yeah,
but I mean, I think that even goes back to what you were saying about prehistoric humans. I mean, how brutal that life was. When I was saying it would have been like a magical time and blah blah, and you were saying you don't even think that people would have had the time to even think that. It would have been like purely reactionary. But like, yeah, imagine if for whatever reason civilization just crumbled. Doesn't matter why, just imagine it. And then if you actually think about it, imagine if we had to like walk through the British countryside, and you had to rely on either like hunting deer, and in between those big meals where you could gorge yourself on deer, when you could, but in between that you're living off like handfuls of berries, maybe stuff like that. That's not satiating. Like imagine living off like a handful of blueberries and having to live off that for hours and hours and hours while you're walking miles and miles and miles in search of whether it's a good habitat to set up camp or food to hunt. Like that's very, very draining and very tiring.
Well, that's why the collaboration would have been so important, because if you think about if you get 20 of your buddies together and you can hunt down a mammoth, that's 2 million calories. Can you imagine how many traps you'd have to lay, or how many rabbits you'd have to kill to get the same amount of calories on your own? It's just completely unfair. Do you
know what? It's funny you said that, because that's just reminded me of a story I heard, and I can't remember who the guy was, but it was I can't remember if it was a vegan or a vegetarian guy who wanted to go live off grid somewhere. I think it's just in North America, and he went out there and he started like growing his own vegetables and stuff. He very, very soon became starving, hungry. So he thought at first, he was like, okay, I think I need to start incorporating animal products into my diet a little bit, but I don't want to do anything drastic. So I think he decided at first to there was like a little pond near him, so he'd like eat like a frog like once a day. Okay. But then after about a month, he'd like pretty much just wiped out all the frogs in the pond.
Yeah.
So then he was like, oh, okay, well, I've seen how I've just had, not only have I like wiped out the frogs in the local area, but just for like that small amount of meat, it's kind of like not worth it because it still wasn't satiating him much. So then he like sort of like moved up the chain, and eventually, like before long, he just became like a full-on hunter, and he was like hunting elk in that region because it's sort of like he suddenly realized that one elk, taking one, say, mature bull elk out of the population, if anything, it's doing the ecosystem good because it's allowing those young bucks to then, grow up and, the diversity of the genes and all the rest of it. But that one big elk could feed him for months, potentially. And then he's supplementing his diet with the vegetable. So it's like, it's interesting how, as you were just pointing out, it's like, actually, it's like, what is better? If you're just eating these tiny little things, not only could you wipe out an ecosystem, but it's actually not worth it. Whereas if you go for like a large mammal, as you said, like how many tons do you say, like in a mammoth, like the meat is just, it's such...
Yeah, it was. I think I reckon an average sized female, like of birthing age, adult was around 2 million calories. So that could feed, a troop of 30 people for a month in the harshest of winters. Yeah,
amazing. Right, so what's your next animal? What's your next notable animal?
We'll go with Brachiosaurus. We'll go with Brachiosaurus for sake of people understanding what we're on about, but you could go also Argentinosaurus, which is basically, the largest sauropod to ever exist. I find the way they sort of really push the limits on what is biomechanically possible via size regarding the laws of our planet is almost impossible to sort of comprehend. I find that even weirder than the Ankylosaurus to a degree. You go into a museum and you see these fossils on display, and it's like you walk into a building. You're like, no, that was a living, breathing animal. And then you go to the zoo and you see an elephant or a giraffe. And you're like, okay, that's a big animal up close. You see a video of it, and you see it in person. You're thinking, okay, there's a big difference here. Yeah, definitely. So to comprehend what a sauropod, you're talking 60 to 80 tons. They reckon some of the higher estimates are for these animals. And the way they could only exist through certain bird-like adaptations, evolutionary adaptations, like air sacs in the bones to make them lighter, things like that. Having a really small head with no big teeth or jaw movements, because they would then swallow stones that would break up plant matter in their stomach, so they didn't have to chew as much. All these little things that it's just so alien to anything we really know. Yeah, and I think that's a really cool thing. Obviously, would have been really impressive to look at. And I often think to myself, if we could hypothetically bring back dinosaurs, that would be one of the top ones I'd want to see, just to see how it walked around, just see it. I think it'd be interesting to see how right we got it with the evidence we found. Yeah, I mean, what a spectacle that would be. And so obviously there were some giant mammals, that came about after the dinosaurs, ones that were bigger than some dinosaurs, but not actually never reached the size of the biggest sauropods. But what is the reason that, in terms of like, generally regarded scientific consensus, what is the reason that sauropods, that allowed them to get so big? Well, they reckon the air sacs in the bones was a big one because it made them so much lighter but strong enough to be able to hold the body. There was something to do with being a reptile, how the eggs could basically create an incubation period that could then grow to a certain degree. They grew quite slowly, I think. It took them quite a long time to get to the sort of size they were at. But a lot of it is still a bit ambiguous. They're not really 100% sure how it could get to that size. There was quite a few theories came out not too long ago, a couple of decades ago, about how they were only probably underwater animals. They would just wade around in the water.
I remember hearing that, yeah.
But also that doesn't make sense either, because the bones would be so light, they would just float down the river, basically. I think it's to do with the engineering is the wrong word, biomechanics of the air sacs and that sort of thing. But really, I mean,
is it something to do with like the oxygen content and the heat as well? Because isn't it like creatures? For example, one of the reasons why they think that like anacondas get so big in the Amazon, it's something to do with like the heat and the oxygen levels, something like that.
Yeah, I think they're not too sure on that, to be honest.
Right.
I think it was
just a theory.
It was up for debate, because the idea was that, obviously talking about the carboniferous insects, they got big because of the oxygen, because they could absorb it through their system, because they haven't got lungs the same way as us. But with sauropods, it's not quite the same. It's a bit more complicated than that. So it wouldn't have had a direct correlation with oxygen levels equals bigger animals, for example. Right. Okay. But it would have gone a long way in helping them get the oxygen around a larger body. So that would have been, you got to think, these giant hearts would have been pumping blood 15 feet into the air, sort of thing. The oxygen has to be performing at its best to be able to do that.
On that topic, though, I don't know if it might be something that you know about more than me. You hear, but obviously the climate was very different back then. If you go, say, back to the time of the Brachiosaurs, was that a Jurassic sauropod?
Jurassic, yeah,
like a Jurassic era sauropod. You hear people say like, "Oh, if I could go back in time and stuff." Could a human have theoretically survived if we say if we had a time machine and you could go back to the Jurassic period? In terms of like the climate, the atmosphere, could a human survive?
It would be livable. You wouldn't combust like you would in space or whatever. It wouldn't be that extreme. But I think you would struggle with breathing. I mean, we have no way to understand, but you'd probably feel a bit high from the oxygen.
Okay.
I think the carbon would have been less. So that would have probably helped a little bit. I feel like you'd probably been a little bit fitter. You'd be able to get around sort of better, maybe be a bit stronger because your blood saturated with more oxygen. Yeah. But we'd be able to survive. We just don't know the sort of minor consequences of what that would be.
Okay, interesting. Okay, next animal. So we've had Brachiosaurus.
I've got to go with a Smilodon populator, the biggest Smilodon that we've ever found.
Saber-toothed cat.
That's the one, yeah. Just the idea that this animal... I mean, when I watch videos or nature documentaries of any animal, like a big cat, attacking something, you just see that it's pure muscle, pure ferocity. To think then that there's also an animal that existed that had twice the upper body strength of any lion or tiger today, it would have been taking down things like the giant ground sloth, mammoths potentially, that sort of thing. To see that in action, I think, would have just been mind-blowing. Yeah. You got these giant sabers, which would have been super brittle, but obviously a very specific need for them because they would just get to the jugular and just, do the killing cut with the two long sabers. And we don't really see that anymore with any new animals. So it seems to be something that was specific for larger animals that isn't a thing now.
Do they think that how did they use these massive teeth? Because I'm right in thinking that they couldn't actually open their mouths wide enough to bite with it. So would they
wouldn't have chomped with it. No, it would have been.
So it would have like stabbed with it.
Yeah, it'd have been stabbed.
That's weird, though, isn't it? Like almost like a walrus. Yeah, like how a walrus uses its tusks. So they would have almost like stabbed in the jugular. Yeah. And then eaten with their smaller teeth. Like they're more.
Just imagining Ice Age Diego doing this. But I only know these creatures from Ice Age. It's so interesting, and I'm just like, oh, imagine Diego just.
Yeah, to be fair, I've never. I don't know. I might have seen bits of Ice Age. I don't know, but.
Oh my god, this is so interesting. I watched the first one.
Yeah. It's a good series. I quite like it because it sort of made the Ice Age sort of like very mainstream for children. I feel like children had a much better idea about what happened at that time than they ever would have without, fun animation.
It's piquing the interest of all these little kids that then
not necessarily scientifically accurate. No. They go back into the dinosaurs, but
it doesn't have to be at first. It just needs to like spark that interest of.
No, of course.
And then the parents might go, oh yeah, these animals actually lived, and then once it creates that spark, then it's what
that happened with me.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, no, I agree. One of my favorite animals alive today are the big cats, just because I think they're just so majestic, so impressive. Something so awe-inspiring about them. When you see like a big Siberian tiger or a big African lion, or like a jaguar. Almost like any of the big cats. And the thing is, I think, like what you were saying earlier on about how you don't appreciate, say, the size of like an elephant or a giraffe until you see one in a zoo. I'd say the same thing about, the big cats. I mean, there's a really nice zoo quite near here, Exmoor Zoo, right in the middle of nowhere in Exmoor. It's a lovely zoo. And they have a mountain lion there, a puma. And even that, I was looking at its paws when I was last there, and I was lucky the day I went there, it was like right in front of me. And its paws were like at least the size of my hand, like that. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking, like, with, claws as sharp as a domestic house cat's claws, which I've always had cats, so I know how sharp they are. Like, that's a terrifying creature. And that's only a medium-sized big cat. But it was like, its head was noticeably larger than mine. As I said, the paws on it were humongous. Mm-hmm. That was the one thing, actually, that was quite notable to me, actually, was the size of the paws relative to the rest of the body. Their paws were massive. But then, as you said, and then imagine these, Smilodon populator or the ancestors or the relatives of these creatures. Yeah, fascinating.
It would have been a spectacle to see, because I consider the big cats are almost like the most efficient common day predator. They just feel that they're built just for pure attacking and winning these sort of engagements. And obviously, like you say, you have a cat. I play around with my cat sometimes. It gets me or it scratches me and it'll catch me. And like, I'm okay. Like, it's not a massive issue. Yeah. But you scale that and you think, okay, like you say, into the puma, that would take your arm off. It would take the skin straight off your arm, sort of thing. And then you think a saber-tooth, well, it would be a no contest. Oh. You'd be like a twig compared to them.
I think, isn't there even, or this might have been the American cave lion. Isn't there even evidence that they would have gone into caves while even like large bear species of the time would have been hibernating, and then they would even have attacked them?
I'm not sure about that, but there's been evidence that the cave lions were using the same cave systems as humans were. So we'd have been deep in these caves at the time, staying obviously warm for the winter, and navigating around these animals in the same cave system, knowing they're there around any corner, but doing our best to avoid them.
Saying about like, earlier on I said like the lines are blurred between, what is a monster and what is an animal in those days. That's like a horror movie. Now imagine being back in those days, right? So you've got no artificial light, you're just going on fire. Now imagine you're in this little cave system, you hear some like creepy noise, you turn a corner, you've got like a little torch just dimly lit, you turn a corner and there's this massive cave line, which like, they say like a lot of animals, they don't mean to kill you, they're just sort of like testing you out, or it's biting to see what you think it is. They say like about a lot of shark species and stuff like that, but like with those big cats, it's like, oh no, like they know what you are, and they we'll just eat you.
They would have gone out of their way to hunt you.
Yeah. There's no like, mistaken identity or anything like that. There, it's like no. I mean, in right up to modern day, isn't there? I mean, places like India, a lot of people, relative to say population size of these cats, get eaten by tigers and leopards.
Yeah, on a regular basis. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, brutal. I mean, you see those videos sometimes, don't you, of like people riding on scooters or motorbikes, and then a tiger will come out of them, miss them by like an inch.
Yeah, it's a shame. I used to really enjoy those videos, and now that these AI videos are coming out, I'm like, oh, can I believe it? Can I not? And
that's the problem.
It's taken the magic out of it a little bit for me. There was one video that I saw where it was a guy on a bike, and then a grizzly bear was chasing him, and I was like, that was incredible. I love that. And it's like, it's AI.
There's that quite old one, isn't there, which I'm pretty sure is real because I think it's at least 10 years old, and it's the one of the guy on an elephant.
And the tiger jumps up, and you just don't really see what happens after that.
Yeah,
that one.
But that's pretty crazy. The fact that there's a guy riding an elephant in I think India, and this tiger literally jumps, and it like jumps as high as the guy. Like
that's a high jump.
I mean, it's mad how high these animals can jump, and also like the confidence as a predator as well. Obviously, the size and power of an elephant, but it's still undeterred. It's still going for that kill, which is kind of scary in itself. You'd think that there'd be you'd be fairly safe maybe on top of an elephant. The fact that it's just trying to like jump up there and knock you off and eat you is pretty scary.
Yeah, I think it's just a precision killer. It knows exactly what it's going for. It doesn't really care about the elephant. It knows what's on top of the elephant, isn't it? That's the thing that it's going for.
Sure. Right, so Smilodon populator, what's the next creature?
We're going to go woolly mammoth, I think. Yeah. I think that, just the idea that we've got some of their DNA pretty much, the genome sort of basically complete, is fascinating. I think we probably will see some sort of hybridized version of them alive through genetics in our lifetime, to whatever degree that is. And I think it's really cool to think that there was an elephant that was just really furry, adapted to the cold. I think there's something really aesthetically cool about that.
Yeah,
and it's just so different to what we know today.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that other humans at one point were hunting these animals, living alongside them, following their migration patterns, I just think it's just a nice thing to think about.
Yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? Obviously, we think of elephants nowadays as like hot country animals, Africa, Asia. You don't, in modern history, there hasn't ever been elephants in northern Europe or anything like that, as far as I'm aware.
Unless the Romans took them there.
Yeah, well, yeah. Was it Hannibal? Hannibal from Carthage, didn't he? He led war elephants over, is it the Carthaginian mountains, and almost wiped out Rome.
Oh my god!
He came really close to wiping out Rome with his war elephants. The Romans,
war elephants.
He took African elephants over the Carthaginian mountains, which were like covered in snow and really high. That's one of the reasons that the Romans thought it was would have just been impossible to do so they weren't expecting it. And they came down. Hannibal Barca, that was his name, wasn't it? And he came down with his war elephants, and he came like this close to wiping out Rome.
Oh my god!
And I think that was like in the heyday of Rome as well. So that was an incredible feat. One of their best generals, something Scorpio Africanus. That was it.
That's cool.
Was the one that ended up. So we're going right off to different types of history now. You can say, I'm a history fan as well. Yeah, it was. I think he was actually called Scorpio Africanus after he beat Hannibal Barca, and they called him Africanus because he beat Hannibal, who was from Africa.
That's so cool.
I think he was like the amazing Roman general that ended up managing to gather the remaining legions and eventually beat Hannibal Barca. But we're going off topic a little bit anyway. But when it comes to like the woolly mammoths and stuff, it is kind of crazy that they that they did all die out. I mean, I know obviously we hunted them a lot, but do you have a theory as to why they all disappeared from Northern Europe and from North America? I know a lot of people say you've got people like what's his name, something. Where is it? Randall Carlson.
Yeah.
He's got that extinction theory.
Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.
That's it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on things like that? Do you think that was?
I've looked into it. So I think if we're going on basically the evidence, which I think is everything sort of got to go towards, because I've got no original sort of ideas about any of this. I think the climate would have been pretty turbulent. I think there was about 8 to 10 pretty bad glacial swings before the Younger Dryas cooling event finally sort of saw them off. So I think that it's quite strange that the woolly mammoth could survive all the previous climatic survival issues, and then all of a sudden this one cooling period took them off. And I think it might have been a bit of real bad luck where the climate changes and the human sort of involvement just sort of saw them off. It just tipped the balance a little bit. And I don't think you have to, like, it's not like this is like, like the bison or the buffalo of like, America Frontier. This is just like humans trying to survive, and they're eating what they need to survive. There's no abundance because they can't store anything. But if you think about elephants' gestation period, I think they're pregnant for nearly 2 years. So if you're like we're going back to the calorie thing earlier, how much effort you got to put in, you're not going to go for the biggest, baddest alpha male sort of elephant, because that's going to just be a much difficult animal to kill. So you're going to go for the female, and you're going to go for one that's going to be around reproductive age. So it's like every time you take one, you're taking a female out of the reproductive cycle, and then if they're pregnant or anything like that, you're taking 2 years of progress there.
Yeah.
And I think that has such a large knock-on effect that all it took was a few dry periods where the grass or the forests came back a little bit too much, and they couldn't quite get the grass, or they couldn't quite navigate that. And after a while, because it wouldn't have been anything that's particularly fast, you wouldn't have been able to notice this on the actual ground, the mammoths go until they're all gone. It would just be they would just slowly sort of the road over generations. And I think a little bit of input from humans went a long way.
Yeah, no, I think that completely makes sense. And I think, I think the average person that maybe isn't too into prehistory might think, why would have humans gone for such like a powerful, terrifying creature, a creature that in theory could, like stomp on you the way that we accidentally, step on a snail or something like that. But as we were saying earlier on with that guy that I was talking about, who ended up sort of working his way up the food chain to eventually eating essentially the elk rather than the frogs. Like really, you're going to go for the animals that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And also even in terms of just like practical things, like, back before we had binoculars or anything else like that, you need to try and hunt an animal that you can see and that you can target maybe from a mile away on a hill or a mountain,
Well, I think mammoths would have been easy to manipulate as well. You could divert them with fire and scaring them quite a bit. And obviously, if you know where the cliffs are, you can set up traps with some spikes. You can drive them anywhere you sort of need to. That would have been a good way to kill them, I think. And if you're killing off, say, a couple of mammoths, 2 or 3 at a go, that's going to have a massive impact on them.
It's and they're probably relatively slow compared to some animals as well. They're not going to dart off at 50 miles an hour like some antelope. They
get tired because it's a lot of mass to carry, isn't it? As strong as they are, they will get knackered eventually.
It's almost like the polar opposite of, say, why say like rat infestations can be such an issue, isn't it? It's like, because they can breed so quickly and because they have so cycle, many. And then as you said, these giant creatures that takes almost 2 years to give birth just to maybe like one animal. It's like you can see how things can go wrong very quickly. I always think one of the elephant species that I think is most fascinating, I think I'm probably just a bit of a typical bloke. Sometimes I just find the biggest thing the most fascinating. Was it palaeoxodon? Yeah. Which they think is the largest ever elephant species. And don't they think it's on, it's sort of between that and Paraceratherium, which is the largest ever rhino, which was like a hornless rhino. It's between those two of like what might have been the largest terrestrial mammal of all time. Is that right?
I think so, but I think they're leaning like 70% towards Paraceratherium versus the
Palaeoxodon.
Yeah. Because I mean that was a truly giant animal. If you look at size comparison chart to that, I can't actually work out how it's a rhino when you look at it. Obviously, it's quite it's branched off at a certain point. Because I think they were about 20. They were around 20 million years ago. In Pakistan, they found their remains. Right. But I've seen a skull of one of those in a museum, and I was absolutely blown away. I could not believe the size of the thing.
Yes, it's crazy. It's one of the few mammals that were larger than quite a large percentage of dinosaurs, even.
Yeah.
Apart from, obviously the big big sauropods that we were talking about earlier on, and maybe a couple of other things. But like a massive, massive creature. As you said, it doesn't really look like a modern day rhino. It almost looks like a cross between like a horse and a rhino.
Okapi, it's great. Okapi.
An okapi. I think it's okapi. I'm no expert. I think it's okapi, but fascinating creature. Okay, what's your next animal after woolly mammoth?
I have to go with Triceratops. Yeah, I like a Triceratops. I mean, it's the logo of the Extinct Animal Facts page because it's so recognisable, so noticeable, and I quite like. Because obviously when you watch nature documentaries now, it feels like most of the time the herbivore has to run away or evade or something. So the idea that this herbivore could fight back and be like, you know what, I'm going to stand my ground. I've got I know you've got some tools, but so have I. That sort of approach, I think, would have been really cool. I like the idea of being able to have watched an interaction between a T-Rex and a Triceratops would have been really interesting. Big animal, 8 to 10, 12 tons sort of thing, and just this absolutely magnificent head skull.
Yeah.
When I was in Melbourne, I saw they've got a Triceratops down there. And that's like a complete thing. It's got its own sort of separate section in the dinosaur area, and they put like an immersive situation in where you can hear the sounds of the forest that would be around and hear the noises of it as it's sort of, and these light displays show the fossils against the wall. And it was just a really cool animal to see up close. Just getting the size in your actual head, seeing it in person. Incredible. I'd love to go and see one of those in real life if it was ever possible.
Yeah, I think that weren't they about the size of like a modern African elephant, sort of around that?
Yeah.
But I think bigger skull relative to the size of the body.
I think it's got the biggest relative skull of all, or maybe absolute of all land animals.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive in itself. I mean, an animal the size of an African elephant, but then having such a proportionately large skull. I mean, I guess it made sense because they had to, fight off things. Yeah, things
protect
like
the neck, wasn't it? That's what it was doing. Yeah,
protect the necks. Yeah,
you'd had variations of, like you said earlier. There was theropods all through. There wasn't just Tyrannosaurus. There was been Ceratosapiens, the Triceratops family. Loads of variations of those. And it looks like to me there's just this constant arms race between herbivore, predator, and they're just like trying to one up each other in any way evolutionary over like a really slow period of time.
Yeah,
and just seeing the sort of how that expresses itself in these life forms. To me is interesting because it's like medieval war almost, but
for sure,
like biology. It's
a bit like when you if you've ever done like a deep dive on World War II and you see about how it was actually quite amazing how in a relatively short amount of time almost like the wasn't just like the battle between the men on the front lines, it was a battle of technology. It's like the British invented the radar and the radar towers, and the Germans were like, how do they know our planes are coming over here? And then, the amount of innovation that happened. And, by the end of the Second World War, the Germans had invented the first, jet aircraft, but it was too late and they couldn't manufacture enough. But all that stuff. And then obviously you had the atom bomb, all the rest of it. It's like, to me, one of the most fascinating aspects of history is when you have that arms race.
It's the greatest irony, I think, of our species that we only innovate at our best when we're at war.
Yeah, it's like one of those fascinating facts, isn't it? It's like, when did the Wright brothers invent the aeroplane? And then within 10 years, we'll be using them to drop bombs and shoot people in World War One.
Well,
it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
I didn't know that.
Such a short amount of time.
The Wright brothers and landing on the moon, something like 60 years or something
mad,
like that. That's the one for me where I'm like, oh, that was a hockey stick sort of.
That is mad. Maybe even it would have been about 60 years, wasn't it? Because it was very early 1900s, wasn't it? The Wright brothers. I don't know the exact year, but then was it 1966? Was it?
Around then, yeah. I'm not great with dates, to be honest, with things like that.
The only reason I think it might be was because I think I remember my dad saying that it was the same year that England won the Football World Cup. Do you know what I mean? So I think it was like maybe notable for him for that reason. Talk about like a landmark year if you're an English guy. Quite an interesting year, I guess, as years ago. But okay, Triceratops. What's the next animal?
The Thylacine, Tasmanian tiger.
Ah, yes. Yes,
I think that would have been because that to me that survived 40,000 years of living in Australia, and it absolutely fine against the Aboriginals. When they came, I think they were doing a lot of fire hunting. They would just burn an area down because it was so dry, and the animals that came out exhausted, they just go and finish off, sort of thing. So the fact that the Thylacine survived that for like 40,000 years or whatever it was, pretty comfortably, and then the Dutch settlers come and they take it out pretty much all down Australia and Tasmania, so it's got its sort of last stand on that island. And the sort of cultural impacts I find quite interesting when you read about it, because it was a menace, and the idea was they wanted to eradicate it because they thought it was killing sheep, but it wasn't. The poor husbandry of the land was actually causing these sheep to disappear. They were just going missing and stuff.
Right.
But it became a pest in their eyes. And as they were incentivizing these farmers to go and hunt and kill them, they were sort of realizing, oh, actually, this is probably something we need to sort of keep around. It's not actually a menace, but it was all too late. It's like they'd put this stigma of this,
it's like a witch hunt.
out there. A witch hunt. And by the time they sort of realised, oh, this is a bit of a problem, it was already too late. And the last one just died in a zoo in Hobart on its own.
I think there's black and white footage you can see of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
I've seen that. People make sad edits of it on TikTok, and I watch them.
They're another example of an animal, I think, that had a very large skull proportion to the rest of the body, aren't they?
They had a giant gape on there.
Yeah.
I think the highest gape of any carnivore.
Wow. That's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a marsupial.
It's a marsupial, carnivore. Yeah, there would have been nothing really like it. I mean, it looked a little bit like a dingo, but obviously that convergent evolution sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's a predator, a solitary predator.
Because they would have been living alongside dingoes, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I wonder how much that maybe contributed as well.
Well, they were very sort of solitary animals. They would just disappear into the bush, and you would just never see them really. So anything came along that sort of disrupted that would have.
Yeah, and they think they were solitary animals, not pack animals. Like dingoes are a bit more like wolves in terms of they go in packs, aren't they?
Whereas this would have been. So we'd probably got together to mate and then to raise the children. That's about it, really.
Yeah.
But they've got obviously cells that exist of thylacine. So I think Colossal are going to try and bring that back at some point. The biggest issue they've got with that, though, I think, is I think the most recently common ancestor they've got alive that shares a path with thylacine, because it was so unique compared to the marsupials, is a small animal, it's about the size of a hamster, and they're separated by a 140,000-year-old common ancestor.
Wow!
So there's nothing really alive now that can give birth to thylacine.
That's quite a radical difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
A hamster-like creature, and you think of it.
Obviously, the benefit with the woolly mammoth is you can put it in an Asian elephant. It's probably going to be okay because they're quite similar.
Yeah,
but thylacine hasn't really got anything like that, which is quite an issue.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because you've I don't know if work is the right way, but you've been in contact with the Colossal guys, haven't you?
Yeah.
Is that just basically because they recognised that you were doing this great content and they
started following me, and then I spoke to them a few times. They keep me in the loop about sort of things if I want to post about it. I just sort of I think what they're doing is good because I mean it's a point of contention. Like I say, I'm in a very uncontroversial niche, but this one seems to ruffle a few feathers. Some people aren't happy with how they're sort of conducting their research and that sort of thing.
What's the controversy there?
So they brought out the direwolf.
Yeah.
The puppies. There was some controversy about if it's actually a direwolf.
I've heard that. Because some people are saying it's not a direwolf; it's like a new creature that's sort of like an imitation of a direwolf. But I think that's kind of what's the term I'm looking for? I think maybe being a little bit pedantic.
I think so as well. And people don't like seeing anyone do anything a lot of the time. Like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of money and backing behind these, and they're very media friendly and open to the media. So I think some people get like sort of Jurassic Park, John Hammond.
Yeah, sure.
But for me, I think it's more. I mean, we've assigned these animals their species names, that sort of thing. So it's things it's categories we're putting them in, and then we're saying, oh, it's not in this category, so you're wrong. It's like I don't think it's as bad as that. I think what they're doing is quite good. I think it's quite admirable because they've got conservation and helping the planet out and the best intentions of getting ecology back to where it needs to be, or in a place where it's not sad to watch it fall apart. Because for me, I feel like you can't reverse anything, you can't put it back in the box, but because we've changed the world and altered it so quickly in such a short amount of time, we need to start thinking about radical ways to help ecologies get back up, because these sort of ecosystems require so long to become something in gestate and then become a mature ecosystem that we can't just chop it all up and fragment it and then be like, oh, let's use the systems that they depend on. We're going to have to use a bit of science and a bit of technology to sort of bridge the gap, I think. And the cloning technology is nothing new. We've known how to clone animals since the 90s. The difficult part is obtaining the ancient DNA, the extinct DNA.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, if people are going to do this, if the technology is so readily available, there could be countries all over the world who are doing this behind closed doors, keeping it all hush hush.
Yeah.
Whereas Colossal, they're out in the open, they're admitting what they're doing,
transparent.
They're trying to be trying to educate and inform people. So I think if it's got to be done, which I feel like it has, we've got to start really sort of taking responsibility for what we're doing to the planet. They're going the right way about it, in my opinion. I think they're doing the right thing, and obviously people are going to complain, and nothing's perfect in this sort of area, but I think they're doing the best they can, and I'm excited to see what comes out of them, to be honest.
I completely agree, man. I couldn't agree more. I mean, for all you know, I know it might sound a little bit like crazy conspiracy theory, but you never know. Some countries might even be able to might be trying to weaponize, I don't know, well, I mean, creatures.
My theory is, and this is a little bit like controversial conspiracy theory stuff, but I mean, the technology to clone humans, it exists. You can do it. It's the ethical considerations. Obviously, it's in the West we're very anti against it for obvious reasons, but you don't know what's going on everywhere else in the world. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and that sort of thing could be a reality soon, if not already.
And when you think about the fact that it's we know for a fact that, say, obviously not singling them out, but we know that on the Chinese black market, they're quite happy to buy and sell rhino horns, things like that, even though they're endangered species. So it's that's massively unethical. So if they're happy to do that, as you said, who knows what else is happening. behind closed doors.
I think as a collective society, the West, we're pretty ethical in we're sort of balancing how we sort of see things.
Yeah.
And we can take it for granted that everyone else is going to be the same.
I completely agree. I think there's almost like a level of might sound like a negative word, but almost like naivety there. Yeah. You know, like we take for granted that, you know, we were brought up with these sort of like generally regarded like ethics and morals, and this is the standard. You fall below the standard, it's sort of frowned upon. And you're expected, you know, and you're going to be sort of like scorned by society.
But if you're not playing that game, you don't care, do you?
Exactly. But as I said, that the default, that's not really the default of nature or the world. That's the society that we have created through civilization and through trial and error, and through hundreds and thousands of years of war and all sorts of things, you know.
I imagine if you look back at the history and you see how reality was for so long, you have 75 years of peace since World War II in the West, and all that just becomes, you know, that's in a history book. That doesn't apply to me. That we'll never go back to that because the only way is up for humans. Yeah. But that naivety to everything's always going to get better, I think, is part of our downfall to a degree.
I completely agree with you. And you know what, we've talked about this on the show before about how like progress isn't necessarily linear. Or it's just not even necessary. It's just not linear. You know, like life is sort of like this. Yeah. Life isn't like that. You know, I think we tend to think that that's the case. And I remember I wouldn't obviously consciously think this, but I think when I was younger, I thought that as well, you know, because you just think medicine's better now than it was in the 60s. In the 60s, it was better than it was in the 20s. You know,
flying cars.
Yeah, sort of thing, exactly. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I think you can see examples of this, you know, all throughout history if you want to go back far enough. I mean, think about, the Britain that was under the rule of the Romans would have seemed relatively advanced compared to, say, 300 years later when the Roman legions had to pull out of Britain. There was sort of like a period of chaos. Obviously, we don't know exactly what went on. There's this whole legend of Arthur. We don't really know if that was the case, if it was real or not. We think probably was, but, you know, obviously not as romanticized in the sort of fictional version that we know of. And then obviously we had this incursion of Angles and Saxons and Jutes. And then we don't really know exactly what happened. How much of it was they like killing the native population? How much of it was interbreeding? How much of it was both? Blah, 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 blah. You know, but we know that, say, you know, well, while it was very Romanized, there would have been, you know, hot water, you know, like, you know, there would have been baths, there would have been sewers, there would have, you know, aqueducts, things like that.
Earbuds. I found out recently they had earbuds to clean their ears.
Really? Yeah. There you go. And you know, might have not been obviously advanced as it is today, but they had surgery. You know, they had the ability to you know, to amputate limbs if necessary, or do, you know, sort of rudimentary surgery. So progress isn't always linear. But going back to your animals. So we've had, was it woolly? Oh yeah, just a comment as well. You saying about the ethical reasons, because weren't they saying because they're trying to bring back woolly mammoths, aren't they? Eventually, am I right in thinking that the next animal they're focusing on is it the giant moas birds?
They have spoke about it, yeah.
Some of those birds are like colossally huge, aren't they?
Huge, absolutely huge.
Like 9 foot,
15 feet, maybe.
15.
Some of the biggest ones, I reckon. Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
As we figured out the other day, I'm not very good with knowing this, so I don't know how big that is.
Well, yeah, Imogen is dyslexic, so not the best with numbers. But so, well, if you think that you're about 6 foot. So twice your height would obviously be 12 foot. So imagine that over twice your height.
So like
imagine that basically it'd be like a giant, like an insanely giant ostrich almost.
Oh god.
And similar in terms of it was like a flightless bird as well.
Okay.
But they lived in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
North and South Island in New Zealand, and just these colossal birds.
Okay.
So imagine just walking through the forest of New Zealand, and you just come across like a 15-foot tall bird. I think it's one of those things as well. A bit what we were saying about earlier on about when you go to the zoo, you don't appreciate the size of an animal until you see one in person. But I mean, that must have been crazy to stand in front of one of those creatures.
I fed an ostrich not too long ago actually, and it was really aggressive and sort of, it was only like feeding it a few leaves and stuff. But I was looking at its feet and thinking, if that scratched me or kicked at me, that would rip my stomach open easily. Yeah. So the idea of these birds in New Zealand would have been absolutely incredible. But like I say, they were quite a unique one because there was no real land predators in New Zealand at the time. So they just filled that niche. So these birds could get so big because there was just nothing else stopping them, basically.
Did they die out because of humans? Do you know?
I think... I can't remember correctly.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I don't expect you to know everything.
I think they were going downhill pretty badly, and I think we killed them off towards the end. Yeah,
I think you see that with a lot of, similar to the dodo.
I don't think it was like the Western sort of people who came. I think it was the Polynesians who went to New Zealand who did it. They sort of, they lived there inside cultivating civilization.
these animals. Yeah, I think it's similar, isn't it, to the dodo in terms of like, because they didn't have natural predators, they didn't have that fight or flight response that we associate with a lot of animals. So you could essentially just walk up to it, donk it on the head, and just eat it.
Yeah, I mean, the sailors' comments on it were literally they were just so easy to kill. Apparently they didn't taste particularly nice. Apparently it's a really horrible, tough, gamey bird to eat. Right. Because they just put up no defense. They're like, well, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
And then by the time they'd even got back to the UK about like sort of legends about these birds, they were already extinct.
Wasn't around that same sort of time as those giant moa birds, but didn't they have the world's largest ever eagle, the Haast eagle? Wasn't that also
Haast
around?
Eagle was New Zealand, yeah. They reckon the Haast eagle would have been one of the only animals that could, attack a moa, basically like a young juvenile moa.
Isn't there even some evidence that they might have preyed upon humans?
Yeah, they reckon they'd have picked up small children and taken away old ladies and things like that.
Think about
Why do you look so proud about that, Callum?
No, I was just looking at you.
You're like, yeah, you're getting taken. She's gone.
I know, I just thought that you'd find that, like, because that is a crazy thought, isn't it?
Scary. I'd just be like really scared that I'm going to get picked up and taken away.
Well, yeah, again, that's like a real life horror movie. Imagine that, like walking through the forest.
It's not even like a kidnapper. Like if it's a kidnapper, you can try and like convince him to let you live. Like, I'll just be like really good. Whereas like with an eagle, what are you going to do?
Can't
squawk at
an eagle,
This giant raptorial, the largest ever raptorial bird.
Callum in another life.
And it just, these razor sharp talons, literally descended from the dinosaurs, descended from like, raptors.
When we were on about what animal you would be, you would definitely be that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have the finesse. I think they still would have been quite graceful animals. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that would have been impressive just to see flying through the sky.
Yeah.
And the idea that you would have had to have, because I think they found claw marks of the Haast eagle inside human skulls, haven't they?
That wouldn't surprise me. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I think they have, which is quite like a scary thought, really, to think that you'd have to be on your toes about that. But yeah, with things like the woolly mammoths, I think isn't it like Colossal are arguing that if we brought them back, for example, there are certain places in the north of the world that just them sort of walking around would like release beneficial gases into the environment. Do you know something about that?
It's still controversial, so they don't go with that main point. They don't lead to that. It's up for contention at the minute, basically, as far as I understand. But the mammoths would have been similar to how elephants are in the modern Serengeti and that sort of thing, ecosystem engineers. They would have cut down a lot of the larger plants that were sort of midway growing points to allow for other grasses and things like that to sort of like get to the nutrients. It was create a bit more of a level playing field and keep forests at bay, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the idea is that with the albedo effect, you know what that is?
No.
So what happens is when sunlight hits the polar ice, it reflects back because it's so bright and it goes back into space. So it keeps the planet a little bit cooler. And what happens is as the forests start to overtake the ice areas, they're quite dark, the pine tree dark sort of thing.
Makes sense.
So that absorbs way more light and as it will way more heat as the planet sort of absorbs the heat. Basically, that'll create a knock-on effect, like a positive reinforcement situation where the trees make it a little bit warmer. So then the ice recedes a little bit more. And then the trees grow a little bit more. Obviously, that bigger amount of trees makes more heat get absorbed into the planet's sort of atmosphere. That knock-on effect, basically, they reckon may erode the ice caps completely back and then replace it with dark forests. It absorb way more heat, basically making the planet a little bit warmer. So the idea is if you get a few mammoths up there and they trample down the baby shoots of the trees, the ice can stay there and then the ice reverse back because then it's obviously going to be a little bit colder. So then there's less forest growing and then there's more ice and then there's even more ice reflecting more light, so it gets a little bit colder again. So that's the idea, but it's a bit controversial because the idea of a few thousand mammoths up in Russia reversing the planet's like sort of global sort of temperature it's a lot to sort of comprehend, and there's obviously a lot of other factors that play into that. It's not as simple as how I've just described it. That's the general theory.
Yeah.
But there is a place up in the Yucatan Peninsula called, not Yucatan, it's a place in Russia, and it's called Pleistocene Park.
Okay.
And that's basically, at the minute, I think they've got there some Bactrian camels, some bison, that sort of thing. And what they're doing is they're building quadrants of land where it's quite condensed at the minute. So they'll get all these animals to live there, breed, all that sort of thing, and trample down this very small area. And as it gets bigger and bigger, they plan to expand it and have more animals up there, and eventually bring in predators like Siberian tigers and wolves.
Wow.
So it'll be an ecosystem within itself. But I think the idea is anything that does get brought back to life from the Pleistocene would get put there. And that'll be sort of area to roam. Like I say, I'm hyperboling massively here. I'm not 100% sure on actual plans or anything.
Sure.
But that is a theory people are putting out there. And obviously, if you have got all these mammoths up there, and it does make a difference in that respect. I mean, just by getting the Pleistocene back to what it was, that'd be an amazing achievement, because that was a whole ecosystem that literally went round the top of the earth.
Yeah.
Because of the Beringia land bridge, it would have just been constant North America all the way down to Britain, pretty much.
Fascinating.
Going backwards, would have been just this one consistent, massive ecosystem.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? I think I've heard that they're thinking of, or at least they were, I don't know if they still are, thinking of bringing some European bison even into some areas of the UK.
I've heard that, yeah.
Just to help out.
There is something in Dorset, isn't there? Haven't they got?
Is there?
They've got buffalo or bison or something down in Dorset. I think they've got 2 or 3 breeding females and then 1 male. So they're just down somewhere south now. I know they've got something somewhere like that.
Right.
There was talks of wolves as well in Scotland, but I don't know about that one, if that's going to go through.
Yeah, because I think a lot of like farmers in Scotland were kicking off and saying, well, yeah, it's all good and well, but what about like our livestock? Because they'd have to spend so much money. I mean, some of these farmers have like 180 acres. Mm-hmm. To build like essentially a wall all around their property would cost a fortune.
Incomprehensible.
Yeah, it would cost an absolute fortune. So obviously there's very practical issues with that.
But I think if the government do want to do that with the walls, they have to take into consideration, is it worth giving the cost back to the farmers of any animals they do lose for the ecological benefits of having the wolves here? Because there's nothing killing the deer at the minute. I think that's the problem. And the deer will just come and destroy everything else because they overpopulate.
Yeah.
They destroy habitats for other animals, and that's what's causing the issues at the minute, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, for people that don't know, I think up until about 1,000 years ago, I think maybe a bit longer than 1,000 for bears. But yeah, bears and wolves obviously are native to the UK.
Yeah.
So, if you lived here 1,500 years ago, you could potentially
My mum lied to me.
You could potentially see a brown bear or a wolf walking through the woods or whatever.
My mum always said when I used to be scared of bears, she'd be like, "No, you're fine. Bears aren't in England."
Well, they're not anymore.
They never were. And I'm like, okay, well, you've just lied to me.
I think I looked it up once, and I think the last recorded account of a wolf was about like 850 years ago, something like that. And I think with a bear, it's about 1,400 years ago.
Oh, swine fine.
This is very rough. I looked these up like years ago, but it's something around.
So technically, I'll give her it. I'll say she lied to me.
She wasn't lying technically.
Yeah. But still, I mean, that alone, talking about how like fascinating like history is and all these animals, even that I find fascinating, because I think because those animals, at least to me, seem quite exotic animals. Mm-hmm. You think of like, you'd have to go to North America to see that, or you'd have to go to Sweden or something.
Yeah.
So the idea that they used to just roam around, and I guess just because we're an island, because we're densely populated, I guess they've just hunted to extinction because they were too much of a threat.
It may have been a serious issue. You've got to think medieval England would have been, I mean, obviously trying to stab a bear with a spear, but to shoot it with a gun, I'd rather shoot it than stab it if I had to.
Yeah, but, for sure.
It's unfortunate that had to happen, but it's the case. I get this question a lot on the Instagram page, where I'm talking about Pleistocene extinctions, where people say, "Oh, we're the worst. We've killed off this. We've done this. We've done that." And I'm like, yeah, but if we didn't, you wouldn't exist. So it's like, what do you prefer? Like, because every action has consequences. But we had to, we get criticised a lot, and I do think we have got a lot of faults as a species, but we do get criticised a lot for basically playing the game to such a good degree that we've ruined it for every other animal. That's how I sort of see it. But we're only still playing by the laws of survival to a degree. We've taken it too far, I think, now. And that's where we had to sort of take sort of like stewardship and be like, right, we have responsibility now, and we have ethics and morality to sort of contend with. But overall, we have just become, a very successful species in that respect. And even with how good we are now, 8 billion of us or that sort of thing, we're not guaranteed a future. The most dominant life forms in any ecosystem generally are the most short-lived because they have such an impact. They're so sensitive to climate changes and different changes. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in that category to the highest degree. We in the UK, we struggle with a bad snow day with the cars and travel sort of thing. So I think if we do have an issue where it's, the planet does decide, okay, we're going to start getting a bit more turbulent now, because we've had this sort of Holocene period now, the last 12,000 years, which have been really quite calm climatically. There's been nothing that's been a massive issue for us. We seem to be coming out of like a big glacial period, and that's what the global warming basically is. We're losing the ice age. We're coming out of that basically. But that had to happen so that we could become who we need to be. All these glaciers receded, and it gave us fertile land to start looking at, farming and that sort of thing. It was only possible because of that and because of the runoff and that sort of thing. So the calm we've got now, it's integral to what we are, but it's not guaranteed, and that's, I think, the scary part.
Yeah, and I think sometimes maybe as a species, it's a little bit like what we were talking earlier on about, like, maybe like our civilization and morals and ethics and stuff. But I think maybe we sometimes be a little bit naive in terms of, like, we take for granted also, like how our safety or how hard it would be, say, for us to die out. And I don't obviously mean this I don't want to be sounding like catastrophic or nihilistic, because I'm not a nihilistic person, so I don't think it's helpful for anybody to take a nihilistic view of anything in life. It's just completely pointless and completely unhelpful to yourself and to civilization. But at the same time, we have to realize, as you said, a bit like what we were saying earlier on about the woolly mammoths. I mean, it might not take us 2 years to give birth, but 9 months is relatively quite a long time to give birth to one, usually one child. I mean, of course, sometimes people have twins or triplets, but it's the exception, not the rule, isn't it? So and already certain populations across the world, maybe for whatever reason, aren't having as many kids as they used to. So there's many different factors, but a couple of little bit different tweaks could make a massive difference in terms of how well we're doing as a species. Yeah,
it's interesting, really, because, like I say, the birth decline rate is obviously, I think, quite a hot topic of contention. And we're the first generation to sort of say, look, because every other generation before has been like, what, life's hard, but you've got to have kids because there's a better tomorrow. Whereas now we're the first generation, especially in the West, where we're saying, is there any point having kids because we don't know if there's a better tomorrow? And like you say, that nihilism isn't great because it isn't productive to getting a society going. But I think in the age of a sort of individualist, where it's like, what's in it for me, is the sort of approach that's come out of the culture in recent years. That's stopping us from being like, we need to reproduce and carry on. So I don't think the human species is any real trouble from declining birth rates. I think it's particular countries in general. Like one or two countries may really struggle to have to import some people from other parts of the world, or robots will start taking up the work. I mean, that's what I see happening in the West. But as far as a species, I think, you got like, okay, things could go pretty bad. Civilization could go haywire. All these things are obviously always possible. But we've survived worse things. The Bronze Age collapse. We've survived the fall of Rome in sort of, we're resilient. We just adapt and we get on, and it's not on a sort of species scale, but it's the same sort of thing. It's being like, this is my environment, this is what we're going to do, and if we navigate it correctly, we can sort of get through. It won't be a perfect life. It won't be like ideal, but it's surviving, and that's only the name of life, really, isn't it? Life doesn't care or consider happiness. Life cares about, did you reproduce and pass your genes on? So
exactly. And I think wasn't there an extinction event once in the course of human history where they think that we got down to like a number of even like a few thousand, and we're all descended from those few thousand.
1,400. I'm not sure.
That's crazy,
it's concrete on that, but there have been a few bottlenecks at points.
That is mad. I can't remember what extinction event that was, but about 1,400 people. Think. I mean, just the town that we're in right now, I think has about 20,000 people in, and that's like just a moderately sized.
We're like all related.
Well, I don't think
technically.
I don't think nowadays it's like an inbreeding problem.
It's just one big inbred everyone.
That's an interesting take on it, though.
I think that's actually happening with cheetahs in Africa now,
right?
Where their bottleneck went down so low. Right. Since conservation efforts have helped, they actually improve their numbers quite a bit. But they have inbreeding problems massively because the genetic sample was so small.
Sure.
And they don't know that like it can cause troubles. So they're just like,
of course they don't.
Just like, it's just somebody else, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess that's that. But that's you're talking about like taking stewardship and that. That's where humans can really come in and do something really beneficial and like help out with that, and maybe bring in bigger sample sizes. And
I'm not sure how they sort of tackle that one really.
Yeah.
Because there was an American cheetah that was. Yeah. I mean, that would have lived. I don't think it was even that much bigger or smaller. I think it was pretty similar in size, sort of thing. There's probably a chance of bringing that back and sort of bringing a bit more diversity in. But I don't know how you solve that problem, to be honest. There's a few. I think the problem is once obviously you get down to a certain level of genetic sort of material to work with, you've then got to sort of go backwards. I mean, I don't know how much ancient or even older cheetah DNA we've got.
Sure.
So you probably need that to sort of make a massive impact. But I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, unless they can track certain genetic families and sort of put them away from each other to then come back around later on.
Yeah.
But that's a difficult one, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about that sort of North American cheetah, isn't there like a species or some species of antelope in North America that can just run ridiculously fast? And up until we knew about the North American cheetah, there was like no really explanation for why they could run so fast. But it's because obviously they evolved to have to be able to escape from these cheetahs, who probably their top speed would have been comparable maybe to an African cheetah's. So that's just even that's quite interesting, isn't it? Why have you got these animals that are like running like twice as fast as a bear can run? Mm-hmm. Because you don't need to. Obviously, like biology is quite efficient, isn't it? I mean, that's in terms of like if you don't need it, then
It's
your
gone,
body will just get rid of it.
Mhm.
You know, it's quite, so the fact that you could be like say over twice as fast as the fastest predator around, it's sort of, you know, yeah. So it's just quite. I just think things like that are quite interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, you can get lost in it.
Yeah, for sure, man. So your last animal, we branched off a lot then, but that was a really good, interesting little few conversations there, man. But yeah, so I think woolly mammoth was your last creature of your most fascinating now extinct animals. So what's your next one?
We'll go with Australopithecus.
Which one's that?
Lucy. So,
yeah. Ancient hominid.
Yeah, so the one from Africa. Obviously, we've only got very small evidence they even existed. I think the Lucy story is pretty incredible. You know, she was, you know, I think she was as tall as like a 7-year-old is pretty much. And she fell likely and just got stuck in a cavern with a bit of water, and the mud sort of preserved her to a really good degree. For like 2 million years, she was sort of just kept there. They found her in 1974, I believe. And just the idea that you had this hominid that sort of, it could still branch out and still spend time in the tree, still probably mostly eating fruit and nuts and bits and pieces like that. But it was starting to walk with bipedal legs, a very, very uncommon thing, obviously, in the natural world. And it had benefits around sort of like you could sort of scan the horizon a bit better. You could carry things in your hand.
So was she a Homo erectus? Sorry to interrupt.
She was Australopithecus.
Sorry, you already said that.
Yeah, Homo erectus was the one that sort of manipulated fire. They reckon that was an in between sort of between human and Australopithecus.
So she was pre Homo erectus.
She would have been mostly monkey when you look at her. Like a Homo erectus would have looked like a very monkey looking human, whereas Australopithecus looked like an ape.
Well, yeah. Sure.
And yeah, just nothing remarkable about her life whatsoever. Just a slightly intelligent bipedal ape walking around. And
why are you looking at me?
Sorry.
What?
Not my words. Not my words.
I couldn't. I'm sorry.
I was enjoying this. But I can just see you.
Sorry, that was low hanging fruit. So I just couldn't help myself. As soon as the idea in my head to just like look at, I just couldn't help myself. Sorry, Imogen.
Yeah, you better be.
You know I love you. Yeah, sorry, Ryan.
But yeah, like just saying, like, you know, they had no idea, no concept of what a celebrity was or civilization or anything that was coming ahead. They wouldn't know they were like the precursor to what they were, sort of thing. And now all of a sudden, her body's been flown around the world, talked about endlessly. It's, you know, one of the most viewed fossils and discoveries of our time. And then that makes you think also now it's like that was just an animal that was ambivalent to everything, didn't have a clue what was going on. And it's like, okay, and now we're in that situation. What's going to look back at us and be like, that was just a, you know, ape that just thought it knew everything because it had a few world wars and stuff. Yeah. Because it had technology and phones, it thought it was this incredible creature. And we look back at it now with almost like apathy, like, oh, how my sweet child, you knew nothing.
Everything's relative, isn't it? Everything's relative. Cool, man. What's your next creature?
Luca, we'll go with, you know, have you heard of the last universal common ancestor?
No.
So we've got no idea what it is.
No, I don't think so.
We've got absolutely no idea what it is, really, what it looks like or anything. We can pin back to a single point in life where the last universal common ancestor of everything alive today existed. It would have been one life form.
Wow.
Obviously, you're talking billions of years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And just to be like, was that the origin of life and then it became one thing, or has life started more than once? So as far as we're aware, life's only ever started once and continued from that one progression. Would have been Luca, would have been our last sort of like node on what we understand. And then anything beyond that, we sort of is just abstraction, basically. So the idea that one little thing, whatever it was, allowed for all this. Everything we spoke about, everything that's in my book, everything we've discussed today, it came from one insignificant blob of life, pretty much.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what it would look like, would it? Just like a little blob?
We don't know.
Oh, we literally don't know?
It's to do with like chemical isotopes and bits and pieces of molecular evidence. We don't really have any idea of what it would have sort of looked like.
That's crazy, isn't it?
So sciencey. I forget that everything's all the science stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, remember that word.
Man, it is absolutely fascinating. Any other creatures? Any other animals?
Comes to mind. The Quetzalcoatlus is always a favourite of mine.
It's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah. The idea that there was a pterosaur, so like a flying reptile, in the Cretaceous period, that would have been the size of a fighter jet. It would have been, you know, if it was flying over you, you'd have heard a swoop.
Oh my god!
You'd have seen the shadow cover you, and you'd be like, oh my god, that's fine. And that really was, they reckon, the upper limits of powered.
It's the largest ever flying creature, wasn't it?
If it could fly, we're pretty confident it could, but we're just not sure, certain on the degree of how it could, because
to take off.
Well, you know that during the Cretaceous period, there was the huge inland sea in North America. Okay. So that would have been like a huge shallow sea that covered like most of like the middle states and that sort of thing. Wouldn't have been particularly deep anyway, because obviously America's underneath it. But obviously that would have created like large systems where wind would have caused upwells and bits and pieces. I don't fully understand it, but basically it would have been huge drafts that would have taken these bigger creatures. So they may have like jumped off cliffs and caught that a little bit.
Yeah.
But in terms, it wouldn't have been flight the way you see like a sparrow fly, for example.
Yeah, because to take off, like the biomechanics of being able to maybe like run enough to then push off the ground enough to then, it would very biomechanically
If you had
hard.
to compare it to an animal in terms of structure, a lot of people use the giraffe to sort of show how it, because it's big, gangly, it's tall. Awkward, cumbersome, maybe.
But imagine like a giraffe with wings trying to take off.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to eat you.
Trying
to steal you.
Yeah. Because they had massive beaks as well, didn't they?
Yeah, huge.
Like like I don't know how many feet long, but like 10-foot long beaks or something like that.
Maybe about 6 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm being over the top, but still, that's crazy.
That's mad.
They'd probably hunted fish, so they'd need that streamlined sort of diving through water and getting in quickly sort of thing. So a long, sharp beak would have been probably pretty useful. Yeah,
but it would have been quite a scary animal. And I can imagine they would have been just because of the animals that have been living alongside as well. I imagine relatively aggressive as well. So
but you'd have to be to survive that, wouldn't you? Really.
I don't think if it was on land, you'd want to get within sort of 30 feet of one,
unless you had a bit of like chainmail on or something.
Yeah, even that I wouldn't want to test my luck, maybe, because I imagine the amount of force it would be able to produce with its razor sharp beak. That's a large animal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Another interesting fact about Quetzalcoatlus. I think it's named after an Aztec god.
Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, who was like the serpent god of the Aztecs. Which I thought was just a cool little fact.
Cool.
Sometimes I just love why animals are named what they're named. It's like sometimes a little story.
There's always a story behind it. There's always something interesting to know. And this is probably you become this sort of like ultra hobbyist, I call it. Where you just go so deep on something that you like. Because I feel like you were sort of restricted back in the day to how far you could take something. But with the internet now, you can there's rabbit holes you can just keep going down, and you don't stop really, do you? And that's how you get all these people. Because no one's got the same ideas or opinions anymore. Because everyone's just going ultra niche on their hobbies. And being like, well, I know all this about extinct animals. What do you know about football? Oh, well, we've got nothing to talk about. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good point. And to be honest, I've never really thought about it like that before. But I imagine, it probably was a little bit easier just to have a conversation. If you say went in a pub in the 60s, people would have known majoritively the same sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. You were all been consuming the same media. Your hobbies would have been a lot more likely to coincide. Whereas, as I said, nowadays it's like very, very niche. People, it's like the opposite of being a jack of all trades. Isn't there like another they think like flying reptile from the dinosaur period they think would have almost been about the same size as Quetzalcoatl? Is it Heptopteryx or Heptopteryx?
I know which one you're talking about. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. I've seen it written down. I think it was a bit maybe wider, but not as long sort of thing, but very similar.
But still like a colossal... I think it might have been Heptopteryx, but I might be completely off.
We'll go with that. That sounds about right.
I might have been completely off on that, but
why are the names all so confusing?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because whenever we talk about, say, like dinosaurs, for example, we're using sort of like the Latin name. Whereas,
is it all like Latin?
So obviously we have Latin names for all modern animals.
Yeah.
Like like a lion is like Panthera leo. But you don't go, oh, it's a Panthera leo. You just go, what's a lion?
I don't say that because I didn't know. I didn't know it was called.
Or we would just say, oh, we're humans. You don't go say like, oh, we're Homo sapiens.
I forget that's the actual name.
Tyrannosaurus Rex. You go T-Rex. Like that sort of thing,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise they were the same animal.
Did you not?
No.
Well, there you go. Well, this is why George is here.
I just realised how stupid I am.
This is why George is here. No, you're not stupid. You're a lot younger than us for a start as well. I didn't know half of what I know now when I was your age, and I'm still not saying I'm the sharpest knife in the drawer.
If you want to catch up, just make sure you spend the next 10 years chronically online. Be online. Get your screen time up to 11 hours a day. That's what you need.
Oh God, no, my screen.
Don't tell her that. She's already on TikTok.
No, my screen time in lockdown was like for the week was well over 100 hours. It was like so much.
It's funny you say that actually, because that was one of the determining factors of me being like, I need to find a way to put this somewhere, because I was just checking Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and I got the week summary being like, you've been online for like 9 hours a day, and I was like, that is just so I basically bought a load of books off Amazon, natural history ones, and I sat in the garden in the sun and just read them. Kept my phone in the house. Like I got my screen time down to 1 hour a day.
Amazing.
And then I was like, okay, great. I know all this stuff. Where am I going to put it? Oh, I got to get my phone back out now. And then he completely negated all that. So, but
amazing.
It was nice. I had a couple of months where I had pretty low screen time, but after that, it's been just. I mean, the page and everything on itself just sort of requires the time on my screen.
Oh, 100%.
I wish I did that.
So, are you like? Are you making? We'll get back to the animals, but are you making? Is this essentially your career now?
I'd like to see where the book goes. To be honest, I mean, I've got a sort of be able to survive and that sort of thing. I basically got a geography degree from John Moores in Liverpool, and I did my dissertation on sort of like the Holocene sort of sediments in the River Mersey, and like you could see like when agriculture came in and that sort of thing, analyse that. And then I wanted to do a master's degree in paleontology. Then I was also working as a chef at the time, and I was like, I don't want to be a chef forever who's got a PhD in paleontology or whatever and can't do anything with it. So I sort of panicked at about the age of 24 and got a city planning master's. And then I got into that job, and the company I worked for were great. Loved all the people working there, sort of thing. But I was like, this just isn't for me. This work, I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy the policies, the development sort of side of it. It's just it just means nothing to me. So then I thought, if I can make a go at writing a book and making deep time engaging and accessible to people and provide a bit of value, maybe that'll be enough to see me through. And then obviously I'd like to sort of look into like YouTube and videos and doing bits and pieces.
I'm kind of surprised you haven't already started a YouTube.
It's been difficult really. So I've been traveling the last couple of years. So I've been in and out of hostels, and I haven't really had sort of like a base to sort of sit myself in. So for me, I sort of said, well, you've sort of got a good idea of where to go around the world. You've worked out now you can navigate different countries on your own. You're actually pretty nimble, and you can get in and out and sort of, see what you need to see. So if all goes well with the book, I would like to sort of like start producing sort of like deep time documentaries doing, because what I find, and no discredit to anyone who's doing this online, is anyone who's doing prehistory sort of YouTube videos or content, it's sort of them talking and then there's like pictures on a slideshow coming across sort of thing. Whereas I feel like I'd want to be a bit more immersive with it. I'd want to take people to say if I did a documentary sort of short video on the Tasmanian tiger, I'll go to Tasmania. I'll get some drone shots of like the landscapes, go for the museums and see the old footage and that sort of stuff. So
have that old school production value. That's one good thing about sort of when say when I grew up is. I think YouTube is fantastic in terms of the amount of content available. But as you said, they don't have that same high standards of, if you watched whether it was
Nat Geo documentary.
Yeah, you watch a Nat Geo, whether it was Steve Irwin or David Attenborough, whoever it might be back in the day, the production value was so high, and it was so crisp. And we are missing that a little bit. So
I think so.
So it's really important that we keep that alive. I think that's why I'm sure you know who like Forrest Galante is. I think that's one of the reasons that he's good because we spoke
quite a few times. He's a really
nice really
guy. Yeah.
Well,
he shares some of my stuff sometimes. I did a post about the woolly mammoth DNA being found, because they very recently found in a cub's stomach pretty well preserved woolly rhino DNA. So that's
very exciting.
Put a massive step forward, because that was the one that they just didn't really have the DNA on. Like the woolly mammoth, they've got a lot of DNA on. The woolly rhino wasn't the case, and now this has given a massive jump because it hasn't digested for whatever reason, or it hasn't eroded.
That's fascinating. Did you know that woolly rhinos used to exist?
I've heard of that before. Yeah. I have heard of that because I just assumed there was probably woolly hippos as well.
No, I don't think so.
But there were hippos in the Thames.
Oh.
Really?
The last ice age, yeah.
That's amazing.
They find hippo bones.
Were they quite similar to modern day hippos?
They're basically the same ones. Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
And now they're just
very
with all
cool.
the poo.
Yeah, the woolly rhinos, the largest one, which I think was a Lasmatherium.
Yeah,
I think it was larger than the largest rhino species that are alive today, with a massive horn, even larger than like a white rhino horn.
So a small caveat: technically, the Paraceratherium was the biggest rhino. If we're gonna get technical,
no, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. 100% right. But yeah, the woolly rhino, cool animal, very very cool animal. That's so cool that you've chatted a little bit of Forrest Galante. I'm a big fan of his work. My daughter absolutely loves his YouTube channel, and I like watching it with her as well. But to be fair to Forrest Galante, not only does he really know his stuff, and you can tell he's almost like a bit of like a, I guess maybe comparable maybe to like a Steve Irwin of today, something like that, if you want to call him something like that. But he does also keep the production value very high. He actually goes out to places with his camera crew and he visits all these amazing places. As you said, it's not just like a slideshow of like
that's
pictures.
What I think's missing 100%. Because I mean, I don't know, you're probably guilty of this just as much as me. If you can't sleep wherever you go on YouTube and it's like, 4-hour documentary, the incomplete history of the Roman Empire. You're like, okay, I'll fall asleep to that. That's fine. It's just someone talking. There's a few pictures going past and that sort of thing. But I think for people to really understand the deep time sort of stuff in an accessible way, you need to be there. You need a bit of like motion graphic CGI stuff. And I'd really like to sort of produce something along those lines, but without using AI to generate it. Because one, I don't think it's particularly useful. I think people are quite mixed about the ethics of that.
Yeah, I am myself. Yeah,
exactly. And two, it's it doesn't get the specificity you'd need for any of this sort of stuff. I mean, I've seen people generate dinosaur images, and it's just basically an amalgamation of all the Jurassic Park screenshots that Google can find, creating basically the same sort of T-Rex looking dinosaur no matter what you put in. So I don't think it really has any value for what I do. So I like to sort of really just have get in touch with actual artists, CGI, VFX artists, put together some Netflix style CGI of these animals interacting, boots on the ground, bit of footage of being there and explaining what this sort of world would have been like, and really just making it entertaining. So I consider it infotainment. It's something you learn about, but I want people to have a good time while they do it as well.
Yeah, of course.
That's the hardest part, because it's meeting people where they're at with their prehistory sort of understanding, which is a big part of why the book is sort of there. So it's like the idea would be is you could read this book and you've got a pretty decent grasp of what went on.
Yeah,
and it's not. The last thing I wanted to do was write like just another textbook, like this was the Precambrian and this happened X million years ago, that sort of thing. No, this talks to you like a conversation. It's like I'm having a conversation with you now, but I'm just going absolutely in from start to finish, pretty much.
That's amazing, man. It's rare. I mean, I think everything's in motion, isn't it, for you? I mean, your page has exploded. The fact that you're in contact with people like Forrest Galante and Colossal occasionally, it's quite amazing, really.
I have fun, like I say. I mean, the idea that I could be the kid who was obsessed with dinosaurs and that sort of thing, and then now somehow wedge myself in there just by posting consistently is a bit crazy. But I'm glad people found me, to be honest, because, like I say, anything I sort of post online is stuff that I'm just reading about anyway. And I'm glad that I can share it with people, because I saw niche pages online, like I'd see like random like Marvel superhero pages get like X amount of likes and that sort of thing. And I'd be like, people must like deep time. People must like this sort of thing the same as me. People are into dinosaurs. You go to any bookshop, there's dinosaur books and colouring things and all that sort of stuff for kids. So I was like, I'll start posting and see what happens. But I did not expect it to go the way it did, with 500,000 people following me and that sort of thing. Yeah. Like, it's been really cool. Like, I mean, like I say, I'm not wanting to name drop, but like Bear Grylls started following it at one point. Wow. A couple of years ago. And I was a bit like, oh my God, I've watched this guy's TV shows for years. I used to have his DVD box sets and everything. Me too, man. Me too. And then all of a sudden, like he's liking my posts and stuff. I'm a bit like, this is crazy. Dude, that is like a pinch yourself moment. Yeah. So that's awesome. And like I say, connecting with people over these sort of things. If I could find a way to make it a sustainable career, then my sort of agreement with people is, if you facilitate me making this my career, I will dedicate myself to providing content indefinitely, pretty much, because this is all I want to talk about. I when I did the planning degree and did the planning job, I came back from work and I was knackered. All I wanted to do was unwind or whatever. Whereas I'll talk about this for how many hours you want to talk about it. I'll go back and I'll make some posts tonight. It doesn't bother me. It's almost like it's renewable energy, pretty much, in terms of me discovering this sort of thing. Yeah. So I'd like to be on the front line with all the new things coming out. So my idea was, like, if I build the foundation and get people to trust me, anything new that comes out in the future, which is maybe controversial, there's a bit of like problems. If we're talking about the missing link or whatever sort of big discoveries on that sort of level and has the public a bit divided, I'd like people to be able to be like, right, I'll give you an objective sort of look at it, sort of thing. I'm not going to try and sway you with anything, a bit of religion or sort of dogma or anything like that, or, personal beliefs or anything like that. So that's my sort of objective, really, just get the information out there that I already find very valuable to myself. That's amazing, man. And yeah, it's great. I mean, we've been talking for almost 2 hours now, and I could happily talk for another 2 hours. But we're in no rush. As I said, I'm literally gonna play this show out like completely live, and it'll also go out on the internet as well. There's still some interesting things I want to ask you. But any other animals that you would include in your sort of like notable animals since the dawn of time list? Notable. For whatever reason, it can just be for absolutely any reason. I like the Dimetrodon because that one's like a sort of jumping in point for people, because everyone grows up thinking they've got a Dimetrodon toy. It must be a dinosaur. Yes. And you go, actually, 6-year-old boy, I'm going to tell you a big, deep story about it. It's not a dinosaur now, and ruin your afternoon. Because they were from the Permian? Yeah. So they're completely different weren't they essentially a proto-mammal? I think they might have been a proto. I mean, yeah, don't hold me to that. It's the archosaurs. I think that they came out around the sort of time of the Triassic, so it may have been an archosaur descendant. But I think I read that you could even technically say that they are a cousin of us, of modern day mammals. So it's not mammals per se. It's the in between. A proto mammal. Yeah, exactly. But it's like we're not like a. Well, I'm just trying to. I don't know quite enough, but I don't know if we're like a direct descendant of them. But most, if not all, mammals alive today are related to them in some way. Yeah. In the radion of their like explosion through different times. Because if you think about the Triassic-Jurassic extinction period.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs in the Triassic were nothing special. They were like the mammals of the Cretaceous. They, they were just getting on their feet.
Yeah.
And you had the archosaurs that were reigning supreme, these big reptile things. And then that extinction event from the Triassic to the Jurassic gave the niches open for the dinosaurs to obviously just diversify into whatever reasons they did. Then Pangea split up at the same time as well. So then you've got all these different parts of the world with different ecosystems.
To explain to people what that is, so basically, obviously, we have, several continents on the planet today. Pangea was, the world used to be like one massive supercontinent.
Yeah, one
God.
mass.
And it was called Pangea. So in theory, you could have walked from one side of the Earth right to the other side. It would have been completely uninhibited by sea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's sick. I didn't know that.
Because of the land being connected, the weather systems were really like uniform.
Right.
So it'd be just barren desert all through most of the interior bit, which would have been unbearable, and then just horrible storms and wet on the coast. It would have been no in between almost.
Wow.
And then obviously when the continents split up and became Gondwana and Laurasia, that's when you started getting this variation. These ecosystems became branching off, and then the dinosaurs diversified and became like sort of a result of that. And that's where you get all the variety you do in Jurassic that wasn't there before.
Even that, I think sometimes people can get a little bit confused sometimes, like, well, what makes a dinosaur a dinosaur? Because you said obviously a Dimetrodon's not a dinosaur, but I mean, to a lot of people, a Dimetrodon would look like a dinosaur. But we were saying, it's like a proto-mammal, which is kind of like a very early prototype mammal, which looked way more like a reptile than a mammal we'd see it as today. But I mean, yeah, so like dinosaurs are basically like a type of reptile, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So there's lots, obviously, the way there's several different types of reptile alive today. You've got like the crocodilians, you've got snakes, you've got turtles, tortoises, lizards, but they're all reptiles. And the dinosaur would have been like a reptile, but they were their own subspecies of reptile. Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I think a big misconception people have, and I think this is the Jurassic Park effect, basically. They think that the prehistoric periods would have been 8 or 9 common dinosaurs they can sort of think of, and then nothing else pretty much, but you'd have had birds, insects, all these sort of things, reptiles, amphibians. The same as we do now, but just in just completely different volumes and forms, like things you couldn't comprehend really. And like you say, we do know a lot about these time periods considering how far away they are. There's also a lot we don't know. Like I say, I think it's something like 98% of things haven't fossilized.
That's mad, isn't it?
And it's like, for example, the T-Rex. That was the most successful North American predator pretty much for that time period, full stop. They reckon there was something like 2.5 billion of them ever, because they just lasted for so long. And when they did last, there was about, roughly based on sort of like how they calculate it based on like how many lions are in Africa and this sort of thing, working out how big a predator is and its ecosystem. They reckon at any time in North America there would have been 20,000 Tyrannosauruses knocking about.
Wow. And
they lived for X amount of million years, that time period, and that's where you get the 2.5 billion number from. So it's rough, but the idea that could even be the case, and we have less than 50 what you'd even consider complete skeletons in existence.
Just goes to show what we were saying earlier on about, you need such specific environments to successfully fossilize an animal for well over 60 million years.
Well, a massive part of that would have been the extinction event that killed them off the Paleogene, the Chicxulub meteorite. Because obviously
Is that New Mexico?
Yeah, Yucatan. So that would have basically caused such an abrupt change to things that things preserve very quickly and very easily. So that's where we get a lot of like T-Rex and Triceratops.
Right. So a lot of what we have were killed out by that impact, by that asteroid.
It would have just fossilized and preserved very quickly, conveniently, sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. Didn't they find was it like a femur fairly recently of what might be the biggest T-Rex ever? Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
I thought that was cool, because it's like, isn't it like, it's not even like half a foot longer than say Stan or whatever,
No.
or is it Cope or Sue? Yeah, Sue. Yeah. It's like quite notably bigger. Can you remember what they've named it? Because I remember I heard it at the time.
I've done a post on it, but I can't remember the name of it.
But I think it's not. We don't have too much definitive evidence on it, I don't think, because it looks like the femur is a little bit damaged. So even the estimates might be a little bit off. It might be even bigger potentially, but then obviously people are getting excited now, and then they're maybe exaggerating.
People exaggerate, and they always go for the upper limit, and then that gets like knocked on, and people say this, and that. I think it would be, if I could go and see one animal from prehistory, I think if someone said to me, no, like hypothetically, we'll take you right back to this period and you can see it in real life. It would have to be the T-Rex, because I think it's one of the most well-studied dinosaurs we've got, just by how much evidence we've got. How close do we get? Everything we talk about that we seem to know so much about that we've put in place for science. Let's put it to the test. Let's get if I could actually watch it and be like, okay, were we right? that would give us such a good incentive and idea of like how close we are with other things as well. Because there's obviously the controversy about if they had feathers, if they were chubbier and had a bit of, sort of like more of a reptile look.
Yeah.
So, and I think obviously the more we get right, the more we understand. Like I say, I mean, I think they found imprints of blood vessels and blood cells in these recent bones of T-Rex. So it's like we're getting more and more information. Molecular stuff can start coming out in bits and pieces. So being able to put it to the test and be like, did we get it right or not, would be a cool thing for me to see.
Definitely. Did you hear? I don't know how accurate this is. I could be, for all I know, it might have actually been sort of like made up. But didn't they through like a 3D printer, like put what they thought was like the larynx or something of from our knowledge of animal anatomy and from our most complete skeletons we have of T-Rex? Didn't they like build like a larynx, put it through like a 3D printer and then blow some air into it or something, and then they've recently come out with like what they think are the most accurate sounds of a T-Rex? Did you hear about that?
I'm just thinking about Jurassic Park 3 when you say that. I haven't heard anything recently that did that.
I think I think that they've done that, and I think because obviously when you think about Jurassic Park, say 1, they basically roar, and it is a menacing roar, but they don't actually think they would have sounded anything like that. I'd be interested for you to do some research in this and let me know how credible you think this is, because I think it was one of those things I came across it and I got all excited and I heard it.
Yeah, I've heard similar videos and it was basically like, oh, this is what a T-Rex sound like, and then you read the comments and people say, no, actually this is all wrong for this, this and this reason. So there are things like that, and that always comes up.
I don't know how accurate it is, but it sounded kind of like a giant evil goose, more like that than the sort of the Jurassic Park roar that we think
it would
of.
make sense. I mean, for the Jurassic Park, if you look at the behind the scenes and the sounds they use for certain animals, it was animals that had like even nothing to do with stuff. I mean, the Velociraptor was a dolphin underwater and things like that.
Really?
So it was more
completely made up
movie magic more than anything. Yeah.
Well, it's like what they call Velociraptor in Jurassic Park isn't actually a Velociraptor, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a
Deinonychus?
Deinonychus, which was like another raptor, but it was just a larger raptor. But they didn't think that Deinonychus sounded catchy.
Velociraptor is a badass name. You can't.
It is but wasn't the actual Velociraptor like not that much bigger than a turkey or something like that?
Yeah, a bit bigger than a turkey. Imagine like a really nasty turkey that just like nip your ankles.
Yeah. So I mean. As awesome as Jurassic Park is, it's not the best source of pure information.
It isn't, but at the same time, like it's bringing awareness, isn't it? And
exactly.
I've always said as well, the cultural pull of dinosaurs is clearly something that resonates with so many people, because I mean, every time I make a Jurassic Park film, it can be terrible, and I still make $1 billion. Like people want to go and see dinosaurs. And it gets people in seats and thinking about these sort of things. But yeah, as a point of reference, I mean, it's a doorway in.
Yeah.
And it's at the same time, it's entertainment as well. Like, I mean, if you did go down the whole route of everything's got to be scientifically accurate, you wouldn't get interesting films. It's like
you wouldn't get interested in hardly anything, would you?
It's like the Odyssey. There's all those photos leaked of this guy's massive helmet. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it should be the accurate version. It's like the accurate version, it sucks. It doesn't look like the Odyssey version that Nolan's put together looks a lot better. So, I mean, sorry, I want to be entertained.
Yeah, I'd say you could poke holes in anything. I mean, it's like, I absolutely love the Lord of the Rings movies, but there are some absolute purists that are like, well, they're not enough like the books, and for whatever reason, But for me, who I remember going to the cinema when I was 11 years old and being like, I've never seen a movie like this in my life. My life's changed forever.
Now you've said this. This is for you as well. Can I just do a quick public announcement, because this is for me one of the best things I ever found, and I wish more people knew about it. There is an audiobook version of The Lord of the Rings by a guy called Phil Dragesh. And if you're into Lord of the Rings at all, it's not anything that's brought out that can be paid for. He's done it for the love of the game. He just created 48 hours of this audiobook himself.
Wow.
He's a voice actor of some sort, and he's basically got the entire Peter Jackson cast nailed. So he does the entire Lord of the Rings book in all their accents to a very convincing degree, adds the Howard Shore soundtrack and the sound effects like the sword swinging and the ringgrave screaming, that sort of thing. I would go as far as saying it's the best piece of content on the internet I've ever found in my life. I've been falling asleep to it for 2 years. So anyone who can't sleep and likes Lord of the Rings, get that one.
Yeah. Please forward it on to me, man. That sounds amazing. And what that must have been an insane amount of work for that guy.
Oh, massively. Like I say, I mean, it keeps getting taken off Spotify and YouTube because obviously it's conflict of all these bits and pieces. But he's not making any money off it. But you can find it online. I think he's got a website. So you type in Phil Dragesh, Lord of the Rings, you'll find it. But yeah, that's one of the things I feel like more people should know more about, because it's a good bit of media.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Any other animals you want to mention?
Megalodon, actually. Yeah, I think Megalodon. Save the best till last.
I know that one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard of that one before.
It's a movie with Jason Statham.
Okay, yeah. I've only ever watched the first 10 minutes of that. I haven't watched the whole thing.
I haven't seen him either, no. But fascinating creature. One of the things I find most fascinating about them, but before you tell us more about it, is I love the idea that they were around at the same time as Leviathan Melville, and the sort of the dynamic between them, and because obviously it's kind of up to sort of educated guesses and what we know of modern whales and modern big sharks, and to sort of like get an idea in our heads of maybe a relationship isn't the right word, but what the relationship would have been like between those two. Like, was there a more dominant one? How wary were they of each other? Was it like one preyed on the other one and the other one was like sort of running scared, a bit like we see with modern day great whites and orcas? Or I think that's fascinating. What do you think? Yeah,
I've actually got sort of like I have many vignettes in this book where it's like me talking about interactions with animals that we can guess at. We've got no proof of, but the science works out they could have been in the same area at the same time. So I do talk about an interaction between a megalodon and a leviathan. Is that how you say
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
I was just guessing.
You sounded pretty convincing there.
Well, thank you.
I've got an interaction with those two and sort of like talking about that and the dynamics of these oceans and that sort of thing, because the whales now are bigger than they would have been at any point in history.
Yeah.
They've sort of got to the biggest point they can, and they're sort of obviously dying off now because I think obviously human intervention sort of causing issues. But they required such nutrient-rich seas to get to that size eventually that it would have been, you can't even imagine what would have been there, especially in the seas. We've got a pretty good understanding of it, but there's a lot we don't know as well.
I think it's quite scary for me. I think I've got, is it thalassophobia? It's like the only
deep water one.
Yeah, it's the only fear I really have. I'm not really like inherently scared of anything else in a kind of a. Well, I guess the idea of a phobia is that it's an irrational fear. I don't think it's an irrational
fear. Your body's
fear.
telling you for a reason not to do this.
But I think there's something insanely menacing, at least to me, of the idea of being lost in open water. You can't see land in any direction, and the idea that there might be some sort of creature sort of circling beneath you, that to me is a terrifying thought.
I'm not a huge fan of deep water in general.
Yeah.
I would like to go and cage dive with sharks at some point. That'd be like a bucket list sort of thing for me. So I just want to see a great white in the wild. I feel like it'd be a very humbling experience to be like, there's nothing I could do to stop this thing eating me.
Yeah.
But the idea that you got this creature that is the great white, the most, efficient killing machine of the waters, they're older than the rings of Saturn. That's how old sharks are. They just existed for so long that they never really had to evolve massively.
Yeah, they predate trees.
I always find it crazy that like NASA went from exploring the ocean to now trying to get us out of this like Earth. It's like now they've gone from the ocean.
Did they?
They I swear they originally were
it's a space
exploring
program, isn't
the ocean, and then they started exploring space.
I don't think
and
it was NASA.
It's almost like they've gone from exploring the ocean to then trying to get us out. And it's like, what have they found?
That's very conspiracy theory. I don't think it was NASA specifically, because I can't remember what NASA stands for, but it's like a space program.
Yeah, I thought it was a space.
It's like a space.
It was a post World War II sort of thing.
The S in NASA most likely stands for space. So
maybe I've been tricked then.
I think you were probably tricked. You probably
I'm too gullible.
You watched a YouTube video. Maybe that was a bit of a conspiracy theory one, but no, yeah, as you were saying about about the. I think sea creatures, for some reason, I find more scary than land creatures.
Because you're not in your natural habitat. We're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
We can swim and we can flap about in the shallows, but we're not supposed to be in deep water.
A fish out of water, so to speak.
Yeah.
Please go back to megalodon though, and why you've picked that animal as one of your most fascinating creatures, and expand on that, because that's fascinating.
Well, I think the great white shark is one of the most fascinating animals alive. I just Jaws really sent shockwaves into my sort of psyche as a young kid, and just the idea that this animal, like I say, it'd be nothing. Even a tiger's going to beat you. There's a slim chance you could get away. You'd be able to navigate the land or crawl somewhere or something. 1% chance sort of thing. But with a shark like a great white, you just think there's actually like a 0% chance I'm getting out of this. And the idea that this thing is so scary, so terrifying, like you say, you saw what Jaws did to an entire nation in the 70s, get them out of the water for how long? And then there was an animal that was basically built exactly like this. It looked a little bit different, a little bit bulkier. I think it had like a shorter snout or something. But it was, the size of the bus. And it would have been so efficient and killing these prehistoric sea turtles that would have been absolutely massive, these leatherback turtles and all sorts of things. And it was just ruthless, and it was so dominant. It had a cosmopolitan approach around the world. It just lived in sort of shallowish to deep areas all around the world, because it would basically have nurseries in shallow waters where its babies could eat smaller animals. And it was so efficient, and it was so dominant and it still died out. It still couldn't navigate the climate changes of the future. And the only reason we know it exists is because we find its teeth. Obviously, they pop them out, don't they? Those rows of teeth. And they leave no skeleton to speak, 'cause it's all sort of cartilage, rubbery stuff. Yeah.
Like most fish, yeah.
So then that to me is like, well, the imagination opens up then. Because obviously we've got pretty good ideas of what it looks like. We based it, the mackerel sharks and what it is on similar living ones and that sort of stuff. But overall, it's still a massive mystery. Like, what was this? A
truly terrifying creature. Yeah, I mean, because there's it's up to debate, isn't it? So there's disagreements about how long they were, how big they were. Some people think they were 45 feet long. Some people think they could have even been 60 foot long, or I think maybe even over 6 foot. Some people think, but either way, a colossal creature, like truly terrifying.
Yeah, it shows you as well, like the sort of nutrient cycles the seas are providing to, like, so you got to think that thing's at the top of the food chain compared to what we've got now. So that would have been an absolute hierarchy of animals that were just eating each other and just fish eating fish basically for how many millions of years.
I'd love to know, like, all of the, like with most things, I'm sure it was a combination of factors, but why exactly they died out.
They think it was climate change.
They think it was predominantly climate change?
They think it was the cooling of the sea, and it just couldn't adapt to that basically.
So do they think that they were more like like tiger sharks, bull sharks, that they like the warmer waters?
I like the warmer waters, and I think it was a combination of the temperatures, so they had to sort of retreat from their like sort of global reach, and then the food chain was affected massively by the cooling waters, and then that couldn't sustain such a large animal. So that's the big thing with top predators. It's not necessarily direct impacts on them. It's like lower down things are happening and changes are happening, and because they require so much energy, they just can't meet those demands.
And I guess when you've got great white sharks and orcas, which are kind of fitting the same niche as them, but are just because they're a bit smaller, because they're a bit more adaptable, they can survive, and the megalodon cannot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like when you look at like the megafaunas or anything like that died in the Ice Age, it was anything like over 40 kilograms that became a real point of contention for extinction.
Yeah.
Whereas anything under that sort of had a much better chance of surviving.
Yeah.
And same as the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs. We were just, early mammals were just very, very, efficient. We had milk we could provide to the young. We could, just hibernate or whatever.
A lot of them burrowed.
Yeah, exactly.
So a certain level of protection. Yeah, because I think the largest mammal around the Cretaceous was only about the size of like a badger or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Survival at that point when the planet's been hit by an impact meteorite like that is it's a game of inches and millimeters. You know what I mean? It's survival hanging on by the smallest threads.
Yeah.
But obviously things around the world did sort of survive, but that if I could go back and watch any historical thing in time, including human stuff, I mean, you've got ancient Egypt and Romans, but I think I'd lean towards watching that meteorite hit the peninsula. Just as long as I don't get hurt in the process. Yeah, I'm a shadow on the earth. I'm at this point.
Yeah.
But to watch that go on, I think would be absolutely incredible, because I mean, I sort of you can watch these documentaries and they sort of show you what happened, and they tell you, it was like 100 million atom bombs going off at the same time, sort of energy, that sort of thing.
It's hard to put that. It's hard to actually imagine that. Though,
this is the thing.
Yeah.
I sort of compare it to when you're on a holiday and you see an amazing view and you take photos, you can show all your friends. You think, it's amazing. I wish they were here. And then you go back and show them the photo, and it just looks dull in comparison.
Yeah.
I feel like these documentaries are probably the same as that. It's like you can show me this amazing sort of CGI rendition of what's gone on, but actually be there and sort of see what happened. I think, unbearable. The energy hitting the planet how it would have been insane. And it's so crazy that like the way it hit the planet and the sort of material it hit the planet at is what caused so much of the damage, because it was it hit a bit of rock in Mexico, which was like gypsum, sort of very gaseous, sort of, it creates a very fine dust.
Okay.
And then it hit the earth at like a sort of 13 to 16 degree angle, so very sort of like almost like a skim. So as it hit the earth, it basically created like a frisbee effect, and it just sort of sprayed the earth, and that's when all the sort of rock went into the atmosphere.
Right.
But if that would have hit a deeper part of the ocean, the dinosaurs may have survived. It would have still caused obviously huge issues, but the degree of what sort of problems it caused on that particular day were just all just little factors that if it was a little bit different, if it hit 4 hours earlier, 4 hours later, and hit a deep pot of water, it could have been completely different.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah,
the butterfly.
That's a bit of a weird thing to get into.
Yeah, I mean, we probably would have never evolved. We wouldn't have been able to, because every time a mammal would have got big enough, they would have been eaten by all the dinosaurs. So we would never have been able to diversify the way we did.
But apparently, we I keep saying we mammals, we developed pretty rapidly as soon as the sort of niches were open and vacant. Once the planet recovered and we sort of the life had bearings on it again, we just went everywhere pretty much, and that was the success. Yeah.
We've basically filled all the niches that the dinosaurs had before. Whether it's giant herbivores like Paraceratherium or the elephants, or it's the, I know that for a while there were like terror birds, weren't they? Which were kind of, I guess, would have been filled the same sort of niche that Deinonychus and Utahraptor and things would have filled. In the dinosaur age, but once they died out, I don't know why they died. I don't know if you do. If know why the terror birds.
I think there is competition because when the North and South America, when they sort of collided and became two conjoined continents, pretty recently after, basically a lot of the predators from the North American sort of ecosystems, they came down south. And then they just completely outcompeted most of the terror birds.
So what animals would they have been?
Smilodon, saber-toothed, that sort of thing, yeah.
Cats, cats and birds, cats usually win.
Well, the only reason the terror birds managed to even get that far really was probably because there was no other actual proper predators knocking about in South America for a long time, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Man, so interesting. One animal that I would really like to see, I've always really liked bears. I'd love to have seen like a short-faced bear.
Yeah.
To see one of them. I mean, I think this is just like a theory, but don't they think that one of the reasons that maybe that humans didn't populate North America until a bit later was just purely because the short-faced bear was such an efficient predator? It would have just killed humans.
I've heard something. Because the Beringa land bridge was obviously a bit of the bottleneck. They reckon that might have been quite bad for bears. It's funny though. I've never really seen any museums that have much about these short-faced bears or anything like that. And I was in Canada in 2019, and I went to a gift shop, and it was like, I need to get a keyring for my mum or something like that. I turned around, and they've just got this cave bear statue, like it's a real fossil.
Wow,
$50,000 or whatever, but you can just buy it in the gift shop. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford it, so I didn't buy it. But that was a female, so it was obviously the sexual dimorphism was a lot different. And that was still,
would it have still been that the males would have been bigger, like with most mammals?
Yeah. I think they reckon it was quite a big gap, to be honest.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But this was still a pretty imposing fossil or skeleton, I guess. I think that'd have been absolutely incredible to see. The biggest of the biggest, obviously, would have been ginormous. Because I mean, you look at polar bears now, he would have still been bigger than a polar bear quite a bit. So to imagine that killing things and obviously actively hunting and stuff would have been incredible to see.
Oh yeah, you were talking earlier on about Smilodon populator, about how you just wouldn't have really been able to do anything. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like fat chance.
The only chance you've got is if it's not interested. That's the only chance you've got.
You've just got to hope.
Mm-hmm.
Any other animals you want to mention?
We'll go with Archaeopterygotics for the last one.
What's that?
That's the one they found where it's like the missing link between birds and dinosaurs.
Okay.
Where it had feathers. There was one found in Germany, I think. And that was basically like imprinted. It was so well preserved, you could see the feathers and that sort of thing. And I think it had like these proto feathers as well, sort of thing.
Okay.
So they could basically say for fact now at this point, okay, birds and dinosaurs came from the same sort of family. There was something going on there. So that was basically the biggest indicator that we would start looking at these these reptiles as more like, instead of like terrible lizards, more like they're a bit more bird-like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of research coming from that originated there, and that's just a nice sort of little snapshot, thinking that it's only a small discovery and idea in it's one small species, but what we can sort of extrapolate from that as being invaluable, really.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I remember that's a relatively new discovery, isn't it? I think when I was a child, there wasn't really that much talk that birds were dinosaurs. I can't remember when that came about. I don't know if it was when I was a teenager or something, but all of a sudden it seemed like it was quite fresh off the press, like. Because I feel like before that, we thought of like the closest descendants of dinosaurs, the closest things we have now that were most like dinosaurs would be like crocodiles or something like that. And all of a sudden people were like, birds are dinosaurs.
You can see it in the media. I mean, you look at like Victorian sort of depictions of dinosaurs. They were like slow, sluggish lizards and that sort of thing. And then in like sort of colonial times, they were sort of seen as this like, cautionary tale of like, oh, if you're a slow, lumbering lizard, you won't adapt. That's how countries can go if we're not careful. When at the time of like sort of World War II was around, so that was sort of like a metaphor they used then a little bit.
Even the name like Iguanodon, which was one of the first dinosaurs that was categorized, like When you think about it, they named it after an iguana, but it was nothing like an iguana.
Yeah.
But to this day, obviously, it's still called an iguanodon.
They put the thumb on its nose.
And I think there's like isn't there like an old Victorian little dinosaur park that you can walk around in London?
Yeah,
is it?
Crystal Palace. I actually, when I got back to the UK, it was the first place I wanted to go, so I headed there. And unfortunately, they're doing reconstructions and repairs on it, so I didn't get to see any of it. But I think as soon as it gets a bit warmer, I'm going to go back down and have a look. So I think there's some good content to be made there because
definitely
it's a very important part of our heritage. Like, finding these
100%.
bones in the ground and being like, oh well, let's try and sort of see what we can do with them. And to go from what we had to what we have got now, I think it just shows how well we're doing at sort of like understanding reality and what's around us.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Whether it's like Crystal Palace and the iguanodons there, or like the sculptures that look absolutely nothing like what we nowadays think an iguanodon look like, or you hear about the bone wars, don't you?
Yeah,
America, they're really fascinating. And I remember hearing as well that they think that the myth of the Cyclops in ancient Greece came about from mammoth skulls that were dug up, and when pretty much any type of elephant dies, and obviously the flesh rots away and the tusks tend to fall out. When you actually look at an elephant's skull without the tusks, it looks very much like a human skull.
Yeah,
like the molars look very much exactly the same as the molars in a human's mouth, but just obviously much bigger. But obviously where their trunk grows, there's like a big hole in the head.
Yeah.
So you can see why a Greek.
Oh, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. There must have been a giant one-eyed man.
Yeah. There've been all sorts. I mean, I think when you think about how much this would have come from myths of extinct animals, there'd been no structure or any way to sort of identify what any of this was.
Yeah.
The human imagination is pretty powerful, so it can create pretty interesting stuff like the Gigantopithecus, the giant ape thing that sort of existed in southern China. They thought their teeth were just dragon bones. They were being sold in a Chinese chemist shop, and someone in the 50s, I think, bought them and was like, I need to analyse these.
Wow.
Turns out it's a giant 150,000-year-old giant ape.
Because they were like very huge apes, weren't they? By far the biggest ever.
Oh, yeah, by far. It would have looked a bit like an orangutan, but it would have been, about 12 feet tall, probably.
But it would have
been
colossal.
Lumbering sort of thing. But then it just makes you think, really, because it's like if that can exist and that was clearly a very successful animal. We've got 2 teeth to show for it because obviously the southern Chinese rainforests will eat absolutely everything up and just swallow things. Like you won't get much out of it. That's why it's harder to find evidence of prehistory in tropical regions because the rainforest will just swallow it up. But to know we get these 2 teeth and we find out about this incredible animal that existed, I just think that it really is open on what sort of can be found in the next couple of years. And I think with everything we've got going on with like LiDAR scanners, they've been using mushrooms as well to sort of navigate and understand parts of where fossils are going to be buried. Because certain mushrooms grow around where there's like fossil evidence, basically. Somehow they've connected this and they can actually see it when they scan with drones and stuff now. So I think in the next couple of years, we're going to have some really exciting things to talk about and hopefully a much bigger picture to paint or a more detailed picture to paint. Man,
I hope so. That's so cool. I mean, just to dwell on Gigantopithecus for a second. You think about how like impressive and strong like a silverback gorilla is in person. I don't know what their anatomy would have been like compared to something like a silverback, but just surely for a 12-foot or potentially 12-foot ape, scaled up to that size with that sort of muscles, they must have been a fearsome beast, like as close to King Kong as you could get in real life.
I mean, it depends how it sort of existed, because obviously you imagine the gorilla's quite an aggressive animal, whereas an orangutan's a bit more docile, isn't it?
Sure.
And if you're that big and you're in, because I think it would have lived sort of around similar apes and smaller apes, nothing would have been quite as big. Nothing's going to bother it, really. I mean, so it depends on how it came about, but that's the thing. It's like, is there a gorilla sort of hybrid sort of similar thing knocking about elsewhere that we just never knew about, where it's a big ape that's more silverback sort of aggressive orientated.
Do we have any idea? I mean, I assume from the molars it suggests more like vegetation, but it'd be interesting to know, was it omnivorous or was it herbivorous?
Pretty much herbivorous, I think.
You think?
They don't think it was carnivorous at all, from what they understand.
Because there's obviously quite a big spectrum, isn't there, of like aggression when you see with like the great apes. I mean, like chimps are very scary. Purely, but they might be the smallest technically of the great apes, but the most aggressive. The ones that are most almost like in some ways show. In some ways, they almost like display the worst attributes of humanity. Almost, I think.
I would say so. I feel like we get most of our worst attributes from them. I think it's really interesting because you've got the bonobos, which are very sort of matriarchal. They're like women orientated who sort of run the societies. And then they solve a lot of their problems with sex. They have all these crazy sort of like situations in the zoos and that, where you've got to be a bit careful with your kids. And then so you've got that way of sort of solving conflict. Then you've got the other type, which is the chimpanzee, where they just rip each other to shreds.
Terrifying creatures.
Yeah, if you ever read Our Inner Ape by Franz de Waal,
okay,
that one's a good one, which shows you like the darker side of apes and stuff. That's a really cool book. Quite graphic.
It's essentially like gang warfare, isn't it? They have sort of gang warfare.
Yeah. They'll go for your digits and your sort of genitals, because they know how much it means to you and that sort of thing.
They know that we're similar to them. Yeah. They know that what matters to them matters to us. Yeah. So they know they go for our genitals, our face, our fingers. I mean,
so terrifying. If you're in a fight with them, you do the same to them.
You're not ripping a.
No, I mean I can't remember how many times stronger a chimp is than a human, but it's notable.
It's like you wouldn't be able to do much with them.
I think like every chimp is like as strong as like the world's strongest man or something like that.
Well,
okay. Just an average.
The question always is, could the best MMA fighter in the world or best jiu-jitsu guy in the world take on a bang average ape? And it's like a chimpanzee, and it's like no, like, they just couldn't.
Well, I think obviously like one of the main things of that is because of teeth. You know, if you think of like a lot of fighting between humans, whether it's punches, kicks, chokeholds, as soon as you have the ability to just go and just bite the arm off,
what are you going to do?
Do you know what I mean? And I think that the speed and the ferocity and the tenacity of the chimp would be very overwhelming to the average civilized human who is used to
playing by the rules. Yeah,
100%.
Shake your hand first before.
I think it would be over in like 20 seconds.
Yeah, it would.
It would run in the room, jump on you, rip you apart, and before you even realised what had happened, you'd either be maimed and disfigured for life or dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think So yeah,
I'll stay away from it then.
Don't sacrifice any monkeys on the way.
But I remember hearing that even in some parts of the world where their territories overlap, chimps are even targeting gorillas now. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about that. No.
Yeah, apparently because they've always been quite wary of gorillas historically, because they know that one-on-one they would lose. But there's just gangs of like 30 chimps that will just target, overwhelm. Like when you see like an ant taking out a praying mantis, they just overwhelm the
Great Ape and Race Wars before GTA 6, who'd have thought?
Well, I think obviously that's sort of like the gorilla's weakness in a way, isn't it? I guess it's like one-on-one, they could beat any ape, but they don't live in massive societies.
They're like polygamous, so they'll have like one silverback and he'll have like 3 girlfriends, if you could call them that. And then he has his children, and that's it. Then they're very, very territorial. But it's interesting because if you look at their testicle size, it tells you that they're polyamorous because they don't have sperm competition, whereas chimpanzees and bonobos do, where their sperm compete in polyamorous societies, whereas the silverback, it doesn't need the infrastructure to be.
So are you basically saying that silverback gorillas don't have as big balls?
Pretty much,
as chimps.
Yeah.
Well, you learn something every day.
It's an interesting fact, because they compete externally with the world. They'll tell everyone else to get out of the way, that you're not coming in my partners or whatever. The chimpanzees and the bonobos, it's a bit more behind the sort of scenes.
It's a bit sneaky.
Yeah, exactly.
More sneaky,
so their sperm has to have extra sort of like weapons to
Yeah, I can see that.
Fight other rivals away.
That makes sense. Any other animals you want to discuss?
We can leave it there. I think.
That's quite good.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions to ask if that's cool before we wrap up. I made some notes last night. Let's have a look. Oh, just by the way, before we do move on as well, in your opinion, when megalodons and Leviathan melville, however you pronounce it, came across each other in the wild, who do you think would have been the more dominant one? Who do you think would have walked away the victor? That sort of thing.
I would go with Leviathan, the whale, just because I'm looking at great white sharks and orcas and great white sharks and dolphins, and I feel like it wouldn't be too dissimilar to suggest that they would have been just scaled up versions of that, and the intelligence of I feel like the shark is pure instinct, whereas there's clearly some sort of cerebral advantage with the whale. So I'm going to lean that way. That doesn't mean I'm right, though. There could have been plenty of interactions where a megalodon takes out a Leviathan. Yeah,
I think I'm pretty sure we know, don't we, that just like modern day sperm whales and like most cetaceans, that Leviathan was a social animal, so it did live in groups.
Yeah.
So obviously numbers
definitely nurtured young as well, so that's something to protect.
No, obviously numbers bring advantage. I guess the only caveat to that is orcas on average are 10 foot longer than a great white, whereas megalodons, if anything, were a bit bigger. than of Leviathan, I think.
I thought they were pretty similar size. That's why I always sort of like lean towards the whale.
I'll bow to your knowledge.
I'm not 100% sure though.
Yeah. So, but let's just say they were similar size. I mean, I'm sure it would be a little bit more competitive between great whites and orcas now if they were the same size. But I mean, big male orcas can get over 30 foot long, whereas a 20-foot great white is more the exception, isn't it? That's a very big great white. Is a 20-foot long great white, whereas it's not uncommon for a big orca to get over 30 foot long. Yeah. Did I say orca before? Or did I say?
You said orca. Yeah.
Okay. I was just checking. Very interesting. Let me. What does the future hold for you, man? I know you've already touched on this a little bit. So you want to do your obviously you're bringing out your book soon. Remind us what that's called again.
It's called The Bones Beneath Us: Extinction, Evolution, and the Fragile Age of Humans.
And you'll be able to get that in Waterstones online.
Yeah. So if you go on to my profile on Extinct Animal Facts on Instagram, all the links are there. But yeah, if you go on Amazon, Waterstones, WH Smith, and Barnes and Noble, anywhere else you buy books, really, you'll be able to find a copy and pre-order it.
Amazing. And obviously you want to start getting more involved in like documentary style projects. Is that really your focus and your aim moving forward?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I still plan to travel for a couple of years. I've not lived in the UK for 3 years now, and I've quite enjoyed sort of just seeing the world and sort of getting new perspectives on things. And I can keep doing what I'm doing on the road, so it's not been any friction there at all. Any
notable stories? Where have you been traveling out of interest?
So I started in Egypt, me and my brother backpacked the Nile, and then we went from Cairo to all of Asia. We did a few months in Asia, then we went to Australia for 2 years. I was in Sydney for longer than he was. He sort of went off with his girlfriend, and they've got we meet up every so often, sort of thing. But like they're doing their own thing, and like I'm just sort of navigating what I'm doing with all this sort of stuff, really. So,
any sort of like big takeaways or any sort of like life lessons, big takeaways, or notable things that happened while you were traveling?
It's hard for me because I don't want to fall into that sort of generic, go see the world, it makes you a better person sort of mentality. Because I don't think it does. I really don't. I've met some terrible people traveling. So, but no, I think it's very important to get out of your comfort zone and to find other cultures and places you don't belong and sort of just see the similarities, the differences. I quite like going to different countries and thinking, what do they do well? What do they do less well than us? Because I think it gives you perspective. I'm
looking at it objectively.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not the biggest fan of how the UK sort of got in the last few years, sort of thing. Then,
I'm not sure if anybody is, regardless of what your views are specifically.
Yeah, fair enough. But going away and spending time in other countries has made me appreciate these other countries. But also, I come back and I'm like, oh, there are things I did miss.
100%,
so it's given me new perspective on where I live and where I'm from and my heritage and that sort of thing. And it's just it's been a great journey, and without getting too generic and sort of like, go follow your dreams and that sort of thing. It's helped me sort of decide what I want to do in life. I realised working in a cubicle wasn't for me, and I said I'll happily live at reduced sort of levels
income or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, just standards of living, pretty much. You know what I mean? I was sharing a room with eight blokes and bunk beds for like 6 months, so I'm pretty flexible. But yeah, following this and following my sort of passion has been it's been the most rewarding thing I've done in years. So I plan to just see it through as far as I can, and if I can sort of find a way to make it sustainable and financially viable, then I'll carry on going.
Well, it seems like the wheels are in motion, man. I say it's been cool for me, man, to meet you today, to be following you for as long as I have, and then to meet you today, to have the amazing discussions that we've had, and then to hear that you've been talking with the Colossal Lab guys, with Forrest Galante. That's very cool for people like me and you that are really into this sort of thing. I mean, that's got to be amazing for you.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I've still got massive imposter syndrome. I think like I don't see myself as like the extinct animals guy. I'm just like, I'm just relaying information. I'm not saying anything breakthrough. I'm just relaying information I already know. But yeah, I think I need to sort of like find a way to sort of like own it a bit more, and then. So people have confidence in what I'm saying, that I'm confident in it as well. So that's a big thing for me, making sure people feel like they're getting the right information from me, and I'm not sort of just sugarcoating things or making it simple.
I think sometimes, isn't it? It's interesting to get caught up, or it's easy to get caught up into like, why did my channel blow up, for example? If you're yourself, like, why did my channel blow up or whatever? Like, but at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, man. You're clearly doing something right. And I wish you absolutely nothing best in your journey, man. It's been awesome to follow your page over these years. I've always, as somebody that's very, I said, been a lifelong fan of all of these subjects myself. I've always known that your content was very, very good content, and I think that you can like pick up on sincerity. So you can pick up on a page that maybe thinks, oh, I could get a viral page from doing this, but it's just like copy and pasting stuff from Wikipedia, and somebody that genuinely has a love for that. And I think that if you do genuinely have a love yourself, you want to follow other people that genuinely have a love for it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because all I wanted to do is just be authentic and sort of say, because obviously Instagram wants everyone to sort of be the next, or create a sort of thing and follow these sort of paradigms. They've got a sort of a certain way they want people to sort of grow up and blow up and that. And as a result, a lot of good pages just get lost in the sort of noise now, because people are putting out, AI generated content, or they're putting out stupid content that just gets a few cheap laughs, and that takes precedent over actual more meaningful content, because social media isn't a meaning intended sort of platform. It's not long form intended. It's dopamine hits and constant relays. Yeah, and it's hard to try and fight that when what you've got is quite a nuanced and in depth subject, and you've got to sort of try and make it bite sized to fit the algorithm's expectations, which I'm not a huge fan of. But like I say, as long as the people out there are enjoying the content, and I'm letting people know something they didn't already know and making it a way that people can understand, then I'm happy. I'm happy to keep going with it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So just to finish, these are some quick fire questions. These aren't really anything to do with what you do. I always like to do this when we have guests on, because I feel like you just get to know somebody on a different level. Yeah. So it's just whatever first comes to mind. Favorite color?
Green.
Me too. Favorite movie or movies?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh man. Favorite bands or musical artists? Doesn't have to be one.
Ooh,
a couple if you like.
Falling in Reverse, Slipknot, Trivium.
My man. I haven't actually heard of Falling in Reverse. Are they a metal band?
Not many people have. They are a metal band. I think he's out of Las Vegas, but he's quite a controversial guy from what I understand.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'll have to check out some of their music, because I actually have a...
He was Escape the Fate lead singer before, and they got into a kerfuffle.
I don't think I've heard of them either, but I do have a rock and metal show on the radio as well. So I'll play some of them.
You should, yeah.
Maybe you suggest some of the tracks to me.
He swears quite a bit, so maybe...
That's all right, we can edit out swearing. There might even be some clean versions online, I expect, because I doubt we're the first radio station in the UK to have played them. But
to be honest, I don't hear anyone in the UK has heard of them.
Really?
Yeah, really don't.
Oh, but that's cool. I mean, yeah, I'm always up to listen to some new content, man, so that's awesome. Favourite food?
Steak.
That's nice.
It's just Callum.
Callum 2.0.
Gonna be besties.
Or I'm George 2.0 maybe. Night owl or early bird?
Early bird. I used to be a night owl, but I'm an early bird now these days. I like a morning.
Nice. Night out or night at home?
Night at home these days, yeah. Used to be a bit of a night out guy, but night at home these days. Nice.
Would you rather go to a party or have solid one-on-one time with somebody?
Very contextual, so of course I like one-on-one time's cool. Yeah, I like getting deep with people. I hate the sort of small talk. Go, how's the weather? Sort of shit.
Yeah, that's right. Dude. No worries. I agree. I think some of it, as you said, it's contextual. And I think for me, it's even like age based a little bit. I know that when I was a teenager, when I was Imogen's age, I was so extroverted, and I just wanted to be. I was like, "Where's the party at? I'm going to be there." Nowadays, I'm just not so interested. I think it's probably like an age thing.
A lot of energy, I find. Yeah. It's just when you got stuff going on, raising children or managing a house or something like that. These things just fade into the background.
Yeah, and I think it's like a reactionary thing. Maybe when you're like at a party and you're young, you're like reacting to everything, and it's all just like barrels of laughs and silly situations that you're constantly reacting to and laughing about. Whereas I think, at this stage in my life, I'd rather have an interesting, deep conversation with somebody, but to do that requires time. And if you're only having 5-minute conversations with, say, there's 10 people in a room, how can you really break past that surface level interaction with somebody?
You can't. You get a job like this, don't you? Then you live in your dream.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But any random facts about you that might surprise people? Any interesting hobbies? Anything like that might surprise people about you, or any facts at all? Any incidents in your life?
This is okay. I fall asleep to time lapses of Lego sets being built if I can't sleep.
Oh, I love that.
Knocks me out like a mallet, honestly.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
I love that.
All right, there we go. I think we'll leave it at that. George Wakeman, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you've just tuned in, you missed the beginning. George has got a book coming out. We just talked about that. Go follow him on Instagram, Extinct Animal Facts. Anything you want to quickly say, or any just to wrap up?
No, I'm good. I've had a great time here. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you so much, George. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers, everyone. You've been listening to Pandora's Box on AW Radio. We'll be back same time next week. Thanks for coming on, George. It's been a pleasure, man. Cheers, mate.